All right, we're gonna call the meeting to order. Yeah. We're in the General Government Committee meeting, and we're gonna be doing a joint meeting with the Executive Committee when we get to the doing the external agencies funding request. For a motion to approve the agenda.
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
I got one question on the agenda. Can we make sure on number 8 that all parties here presenting would stick around for a joint discussion? That be asked, or are they intending to?
Well, we would invite them to stick around. I don't know that we can make them.
Sure, so maybe we can ask them?
Well, we'd invite them to stick around because our number 17 is when we're gonna review their funding request, and they may wanna
Stick around anyway.
stick around.
Oh,
for that
perfect.
discussion.
Okay.
All right, any more discussion on motion to approve the agenda? Not all's in favor? Aye. Carries. We have some minutes from June 10th, June 22nd.
Make the motion.
Second.
I'd like to amend the motion. We didn't meet June 22nd, did we? So there's no minutes to approve for June 22nd. Oh, I apologize.
Okay, okay.
All right, so we'll strike the June 22nd.
Just the minutes in our packet we're talking about.
Just the minutes from June 10th.
Yeah.
I think we had a meeting scheduled for June 22nd and then following it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Carries. Anyone has any conflicts of interest on any matters as they come up, just let us know at that time. Is there any public comments? Are there any supervisors here today not seated as committee members that have any information to share? Are there any announcements?
Have any? Chad, do you have any?
No, no announcements.
All right, I'll bring us right to the presentations and discussion. So how is this working? We're gonna get presentations. We're gonna get a 10-minute presentation and then a 5-minute question and answer. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I asked each of the groups if they wanted to present, and I asked them to limit their presentation to 10 minutes and allow for 5 minutes after each presentation for a conversation with the committees.
And I think besides being on our desk here today, the information from most of the criminal agencies, it was also on the, I read them all online. All right, well, let's start. Polk County Historical Society is up first.
Just giving out a handout, you can follow along and then you can take it with you. A lot of details on what we're doing. And information that you, as Chad requested.
Welcome and good morning. My name is Greta Polk, and I'm the president of the Polk County Historical Society. I'm here with our executive director and museum director. And we're here today to request funding for a full-time executive director. The Polk County Museum is run by the Polk County Historical Society. It's really the heart of Polk County culture. It's the showcase of our heritage. It's the keeper of our stories and history. It's a place where we preserve the past for future generations. Our mission is to collect a unique artifacts of Polk County history, and we share that to the public through programs, exhibits, and research. We have many firsthand accounts of our history in the museum, including firsthand accounts of one-room schoolhouse teachers, their pictures and photos, the school records, the documents. In fact, we are keepers of the Lanesdale School that's currently in Balsam Lake. It was built in the 1880s, and it was the Lake Town District 3 school near Cushing. At one time, it housed 82 students, and it actually closed, was one of the last one-room schoolhouses to close in 1961. In January 1964, it was moved to Balsam Lake. And just this week, while we're sitting here, there's 26 Amory School students in the Lanesdale School participating in Pioneer School. So our organization, the Polk County Historical Society, was organized back in 1937. And like I said, we do manage and preserve our history. We're a nonprofit organization. We currently have 12 board members, all volunteer. We now have a full-time executive director, and we have historical society memberships and volunteers that all complete our mission. The buildings that we run are the Polk County Museum and the Lanesdale School. Those are both owned by you, by the county, and we are in a MOU agreement for the use of those buildings. You can see on the handout our yearly activities on the left-hand corner side. Those are things that we do all year long. The museum is open 5 days a week from Memorial Day to Labor Day. And we run historical programs, events, we conduct research, we keep the archives in order. And currently we're working on our online, which means we have more visitors than ever to our websites and our social media, sharing Polk County history through many visitors that can't physically come to the museum. So our request is for a full-time museum director. Last September or October, I came to you and asked for half of that. And last year we reported the $25,000 of the $51,000 salary needed for the museum director. At that time, we said if you would give us the $25,000, that we would match it with the $26,000, and that we would come back to you this year to show you what we did with a full-time director in hopes that we can fund a full-time director. You can see the museum director's responsibilities there listed on the bottom of the first page. Why do we need this funding? Well, we really need a secure funding source for a full-time museum director, because most of our money raised by grants, donations, fundraisers, and memberships really goes to our operating costs and the cost that it takes to preserve everything that we have in the museum. In 2020, our income was about $36,000, but the expenses just to operate was $29,000. And there were no salary expenses at that time because we did not have a full-time director. In the past, we had a part-time director, so this is the first time. This year, our annual budget, because of the full-time director, is $74,000. We were able to raise that $26,000 through $21,000 in grants this year. 2 of those were $10,000 grants for operations. But We also needed to raise an additional 27,000 to cover the projected operating expenses. So we are on track to do that. Currently, 58% of our budget is going to those operating costs. We will make our income goals this year, but there's no guarantee that we can continue to do that every year going forward. So right now, we're spending so much time trying to raise money just to maintain. And what we really want to do is, if we have the full-time director salary, we could grow the program. And that is the future plans for 2021 and 2022. So in 2020, you can see on the second page at the top, we were closed because of COVID. That didn't stop us. The reason I have the icon with the cell phone is because we went virtual. We put all of our time and energies into sharing the history of Polk County virtually through our website, through our social media. We had 2,595 visitors to our website in 2020. We put up history blogs for our teachers in Polk County, sharing history and giving lesson plans. We had 13,000 views on our Facebook posts sharing history. And while we were doing that, and our museum was even closed to our volunteers and helpers due to COVID, but we logged almost 4,000 volunteer hours working inside the museum while we were closed to the public, developing new exhibits, remodeling our military room, and we were fortunate to get the Polk County Ledger collection of newspapers, bound newspapers that tell the Polk County story history all the way back to the 1800s. So we spent many months cataloging those, putting those in archive quality boxes, finding archive quality shelving, and places to store that into the museum. So with Leslie being on for full-time in 2021, we were, like I said, able to raise now $21,000 in grants so far this year, almost $10,000 in donations. Since the start of our museum season, which runs from Memorial Day to Labor Day, we've had 725 visitors through the museum. And those are visitors in Polk County, but also outside Polk County in our state and outside other states. We are running this year. We didn't know how COVID was going to be, so we were cautious in our initial planning for events. We didn't know how many people we could have at an event. But we are running the Pioneer Schools. We have 3 museum tour events that are paid with local authors and historians that are giving private tours of the museum. We are doing 4th grade museum tours, which we couldn't do this spring, in the fall. And we are planning to do our annual fundraiser event this fall. As we're doing all of that, we're also building our organization. We are making sure all of our policies and procedures in place. We've updated our emergency procedure. We've updated our archive policy. And this September, the board and museum directors will begin developing a 5-year strategic plan for our organization. The plan will be completed in June, and we will present it to the county as an addendum to our annual report. And it's going to cover things like our governance, our collection management, education, building and grounds, funding, and visitor engagement. So our future plans for 2022 look bright with full-time museum director. We are planning to offer year-round programs and events. And our goal is to make the museum the culture of the community, contributing to tourism, education, and leisure in Polk County. Any questions? Yep.
Sure. The question I have is for the funding for the position that's provided by the county, if that would go through. Would that position be a county employee or a historical society employee?
It would be a historical society employee, so we would pay for the employee, and then we
just want to compliment you on all the good work and good things that you've done in the last year. And especially, you know, it seems to really have made a difference with the grant funding that's been received. So, good job.
Hey, I have a question. One of the requests is, like, I'm glad everyone's here today. One of the things is how do we improve collaboration, right? So one of the things I hear you talk about is tourism. Tourism is economic development. Tourism, it's, you know, all these things kind of overlap. And just the thought I had was, what do you do? And if not, you know, do you do it, or do you have any problems doing it? I'm guessing you won't, but how can we create a little more of a network where I do believe someone on economic development is also on your board of directors, but how can we maybe strengthen our MOUs, our agreements, that there is that kind of collaboration between agencies? Do you have any opinion on, and do you have a relationship, do you work with tourism, and can you explain how you work with them or how you work with economic development?
Well, thanks for that question. I will want to say Sharon Kelly, who joined our board, has been instrumental, and I really think that it has strengthened our communication and connection with Polk County, which has been great for us. With a full-time director now, I know in the past, like, we planned last September to work with the other historical societies in Polk County to do a big World War II 75th speaker event with the Wisconsin Historical Society, you know, for the community, VFW. Unfortunately, we couldn't hold that because of COVID. Now with the full-time director, we could be able to manage that more. We are looking at doing things locally where we are in Balsam Lake with the restaurants.
So my question was more directed. So
Sure.
we have these other agencies, we fund economic development, tourism, for example. So my question was really specific. Do you work with tourism and do you work with economic development? And can you explain what you do with those
Okay.
two agencies?
Sure. The economic development, no, we don't, you know, have a
Okay.
connection right now.
Sure.
We're certainly not opposed to it. We'd love to be part of it. I know that you visited the Nation Center. We've been working with them. And so try to get what we have out there. We also have a lot of their brochures that we brought over so that, you know, people see that. But I think moving forward, now that we have a full-time person at the museum.
So you
that's
wouldn't have
part of
any
it.
objections if, let's say, we requested outside agencies to have crossover with board of directors, things like that, that you would share. You know, I think, you know, like you said, Sharon is a great start with the county board.
Right.
But would you have any objections to having board of directors or members sit on other boards like tourism or like economic development, and the same on your board?
No, I don't.
It's just like having Sharon on your
Certainly,
board.
yes, you know, bring it back to our board, but I don't see why they would have.
Any
You know, because,
objections?
no, because I think it benefits both. of us.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
And that's what I sense that no one's really working together. So that's why I asked the question. I wasn't trying to set you up.
Right.
And now the other agencies are gonna know I'm gonna ask the same question.
Yeah.
But that's what I was looking for, examples of how the county funds these outside agencies.
Right.
How are you guys working together to benefit Polk County? I know you guys are all working on good things. Just wondering how you guys work together.
Chris?
One of the things we've talked about in the board meetings is we want the museum to become a destination in Polk County for people, and working with a tourism group, like Leslie said, we've been down there, we're getting brochures from them, bringing our brochures down there. We've had discussions about how we can utilize their website to get more information out about the museum. So I think they're there with that idea. We just haven't gotten to that point where, you know, we're in the process. Right now, it was the focus the last few months is getting the museum ready.
I understand.
And fundraising.
Yeah, and fundraising and getting the
Writing grants, yeah.
And I understand all that. I'm just thinking everyone's gonna be coming asking for money.
Yeah.
So if we're gonna be given more money, let's try to get a little something back too. And maybe it's about developing a better structure between these agencies, that they're all working on some of the common goals together, than everyone in their own little silo.
And I I think they're there on that. We've talked about, I go back to the county priorities with this group a lot and say, what's important? What do we have at the county level? And we should be looking at that. And one of it is developing tourism in the area. And what can we do to make our county more attractive?
I gotta say, great job. Everything you guys have been doing, I hear positive things, so
We have it at Polk County Fair too.
okay.
Question on your archives are, I know there was a lot of work going into them the last 2, 3, 4 years maybe. Are your old archives all archived at this point in time and cataloged and so on and available?
We have thousands, tens of thousands of documents, pictures, things in our archive. No. We had the American Alliance Museum come in and do what they do, a map assessment to tell us what's best practices. And so at that point, that was about 3 or 4 years ago, they moved all the archives into one of the safe rooms because it was a nice dry space. They started putting things in order in boxes. We're still in that process. It's getting better. Like we have all of the school records together. We have the creamery records together. Our next process is to really digitize and catalog those so that like our catalog is online, so you know what we have in the archives. And we're currently and always working on. The other day, I found an 1862 original homestead deed for Polk County signed by Ulysses S. Grant in a cardboard box. You know, so you find things like that, and you have to immediately get them in archive quality, flatten out, you know, folders and so that's what we're constantly doing. A lot of our operating costs goes to buying that archive quality material so that those things can last as long as possible.
Is that work being done primarily by volunteers?
It's all volunteers. So Leslie is really the business end, you know, and so all the historical work is done by the Historical Society through board members, volunteers, and
It's mostly handling those documents are our board members. You know, it's hard to get, people go, I mean, you come into that museum and it's overwhelming, but there's so many things in there. And, I mean, precious documents. Try to, you know, choose.
I would just ask, what do we feel the repeatability of the grants that we've acquired, and what is the upside opportunity for additional grants moving forward?
Yes. So anybody who writes grants knows that it takes a lot of time to put into those grants, and you're not always guaranteed that all the time you put forward that you're going to be awarded those grants. Some of the grants that we get, like the Anderson grant and the Harbinger grant, we have applied for not consistently every year because they don't give it to us every year, but maybe every 3 or 4 or 5 years. We have a list of organizations that give grants to historical places that we go to. The other thing that we can do moving forward, especially with the full-time director, we talked to Red Polk about this, is our 1899 building, you know, does need maintenance. And there are grants out there for historical buildings that partner with counties and things that could go towards the maintenance of these buildings. Up to this point, we did not have the staff to be able to research those grants and write those grants. So moving forward, that's something else that we hope that we will be able to.
Do you anticipate any consistency to that at all?
Of the grants, you mean?
Grant dollars.
I think over the last 5 or 6 years, we've gotten at least $10,000 in grants every year. Not always from the same place. For the same. Yeah.
I'm just curious. I used to be on the board of directors of the St. Croix Valley Foundation. And they have grants available. So just throwing that out there, that would be another resource.
Wisconsin Historical Society uses the Wisconsin Humanities grants, you know, the state grants.
I just wanted to add, I think the museum and the historical society are a wonderful, wonderful asset for our community. Yeah, fully supportive of making them better than they already are. And the volunteers, Leslie, and for all you're doing.
Great,
Very much.
thank you. Like, bus cap.
A little longer, Chairman.
Yes, yes, we did.
You didn't cut us off.
We're gonna say you have the floor until 11:15.
Fair enough. Works for me. Morning, everybody. So my name is Peter Kelly. I'm the Executive Director of WestCap. I'm here this morning with our new Communications and Grant Writing Specialist, Mr. Halter. Very happy to be here and to talk a little bit about our request for $4,000 in operating. One thing I like to do when I have this opportunity is to share with you a little bit of what we have learned about economic hardship in Polk County. And we are very fortunate in Wisconsin in that the Wisconsin United Way, like 21 other United Ways around the country, has done an exhaustive study of economics in family economics in the state. And it's down to the county level, in some cases down to the township level. They call this study the Alice Report, and that's an acronym, stands for Asset Limited, Low Income, and Employed. So this is primarily the population that's not considered to be the group designated to be in poverty, but that working group with the lower income population. But what specifically sort of defines the Alice population, the way they do it, is that that population, given their circumstances and where they live, do not earn enough money to afford a survival budget. Okay. And so when I define poverty, the federal poverty rate is a whole other story. It wildly understates the actual case of poverty. It's been around for 60 years. Nobody can agree on how to change it, but it misses it by a very large margin. But I define poverty as basically the way the United Way does, where if you live in a household where you do not bring home enough money to afford a survival budget without some kind of public assistance, that's poverty. And in Polk County, if you take the official poverty rate, which in 2018 was 10%, and you also include the Alice population, Polk County, 4%, you end up with 34% of the population live in households that do not bring in enough income to support a survival budget without. So that's a pretty large group. And you should also know that that mirrors almost precisely the state average in the whole state of Wisconsin. That's just the way it is. So, you know, a lot of people tend to look at poverty in terms of, you know, the personal traits of a person in poverty. Well, they're lazy, or they're uneducated, or they're not taking advantage of this, or they're, you know, have, you know, all these other kind of things. But when I talk about poverty in public more and more, I just describe it largely as a math problem. Okay. Working full time, and you got a couple of kids, and you're bringing home, you know, $1,400 a month, and it costs $1,800 a month for a no-frills survival budget. What are you gonna do? It's not a money management problem or anything else. It's a math problem. So we try to kind of destigmatize a little bit that population, because that really is the story that we run into again and again. You know, in terms of, I've been in this business now, when I was 18, working in a low-income foundation in St. Paul, about 53 years. And the virtues that people describe about, you know, honesty, hard work, thrift, care for the family, responsibility, all that kind of stuff, I find these distributed just about evenly across the population. Doesn't make a difference whether you're middle class, rich, low income. It's about the same. So we kind of tend to look at people primarily through this economic lens. Like nobody pays us to be their judge or to evaluate anything beyond, are they earning enough income in that household? And if there isn't, then it's our responsibility and our mission to step in and try to help those families and ideally work their way to a point where they can become more self-sufficient. What that means in Polk County is that in the last full year that we captured this, we ended up serving 900 people. And as I described in the letter I sent, I don't know if you have that in your packet, but these services tend to be pretty much essential things you absolutely have to get by. We did a lot of homeless intervention, food security, supporting food pantries, that kind of thing, a lot of rent assistance. We do home weatherization. We've been doing that for 50 years all over the country. We support literacy, car ownership, so that people can round and meet their basic needs. We also own and manage 36 affordable housing units in Polk County. 4 of them are in Osceola, the project. And then I realized, as I was preparing my remarks last night, much to my horror, and yes, I do use a template for different counties. One sentence from my request to St. Croix County snuck its way into, you might have got that. So I brag in here about, that we're currently building 50 units of affordable housing in Richmond. You shouldn't care. And it's not supposed to be there. If it makes you feel any better, we're asking St. Croix County for $6,000, partly because we do more activity. St. Croix County. So very briefly, the 900 people that we serve here in a variety of ways, doing kind of a back of the envelope calculation that is expressly conservative, this brings about $500,000 of economic impact. And most of that money is spent there. This population does not invest in futures and buy or anything. They spend it in their local communities. It goes to landlords and stores, and gas stations, and all that sort of stuff. So in our basic funding mix, I'd also point out that about 95% of the funding that WestCap uses to operate the programs comes from outside of our service territory. It's a lot of it has a federal origin. We bring more of that tax money back. A lot of it has state. And then we do get a wide variety of private, tend to be small grants, foundation grants. So our ask is less than 1% of what we bring into the county. We get return on your investment. This is useful to us in 2 important ways. One is because we always, every year for as long as I can remember, have gotten this kind of all 7 of the counties operate. We can tell our funders, the counties, and the county governments appreciate us. The other thing that it does is that as being managers of a lot of federal funding opportunities, as you can imagine, we deal with piles of regulation and constraints and all that kind of stuff. Sometimes I find our mission is absorbing bureaucracy so that we can give a little help out that people don't have to deal with all that kind of stuff. But there are a lot of restraints on what we can spend money on. A little flexible money where we can help people that just don't meet the criteria of this housing grant, that foods or whatever it might be, but they run into a situation where they're just, car breaks down and they got a new job starting the next week. They can't afford their internet access, whatever it might be. Have some money to be able to help that family get stabilized. So, that's essentially my report. Again, what we're asking for, we haven't changed this in quite a number of years, $4,000. I'll also point out that you have a board seat on the Westside board, Jay Luke. I have not met Jay in person, so.
I have at various other meetings years ago, but
Years ago, I met Jay. I remember so well. What a wonderful person he is. Anyway,
you know,
so, yeah.
and I want to comment
on the flat
on
screen.
the fact and somewhat apologize for the fact that it's been very complicated due to the COVID situation. And so whatever I've gained from your presentations, the things over the last few months were by telephone. And extremely hard for me to just sit and listen. But in fact, the first couple of months, and you started off this program with an acronym, and believe me, that was one of the biggest problems I had, is trying to decipher what all these acronyms are and what they mean. You know? So, so I've been remiss in my reporting to the county board in reference to the accomplishments and efforts of Westcott. But I've been familiar for many years. Daughter that worked with you in the field, Boyceville, and she speaks very highly of you, of course, and the programs that you're affiliated with all the way through through our counties. And it's an unbelievable organization, and what you're accomplishing far exceeds any funds that we may be expending or helping you out with. So I'll look forward to. I understand we're trying to get together with some meetings in person, and hopefully you can accomplish that so I can better absorb what's being done. But I'm extremely impressed.
Thank you very much. And, we've always had a great board, good board representation, Larry Jessup in this
Right.
for many years was our board chair.
It'd be impossible to replace, but at least we can try.
Well, it's big shoes to step into.
Yeah.
Very much appreciate the support.
Good to
What makes
hear.
it work.
Enjoy your Mondays anyway.
Well, thank you. I do put out a little Monday update. I started during COVID because I don't see people as much, so. And I try to bring a little humor in the family.
Yeah, it's good.
Stuff in there. And,
Good job.
I enjoy writing.
It's fun.
Anyway, but more than happy to take any questions from the board. I was good. I've got a super report because I apparently covered everything. But thank you very much. And we'll hang on a bit.
Economic development.
Morning, everybody. Go a little more technology. Hopefully Sean and I have worked this out, but I'm going to share my screen so you can actually see my presentation because there are some things you'll see in this day and age for economic development, having the ability to adapt to current technology and use current technology is a very important issue to reach not only our own county, but way beyond our county as well. So do I need to start sharing, Sean?
Terry, if you want to start there.
Okay. Can that be made any bigger? Here, I'm going to get out of the way. You don't need to see me. That is large as it's going to be. Okay. So you can read what the economic development purpose is, and we try and really stick to that economic development purpose. But I also want to try and get rid of some misconceptions that people think about economic development, even to this day. There are things that impact economic development way beyond the industrial parks. People think economic development equals industrial parks, and that is a big piece of what we do. But so much of what goes on in those industrial parks is affected by so much other things that are going on in the county, which is also part of economic development. As we're presenting here this morning, you can see how this somewhat all ties together. Our goal is to try and drive that overall growth in specific areas of the economy. So I tried to stick to the structure that Chad gave us, which is talk a little bit about the structure. What have you done? What are you going to do? And how much money do you want? So that's pretty much what I've done here. So real quick on the structure of our board, we have a board of 15, max of 15. We have a current member board of 14 that is very diverse throughout the county. A lot of different membership board members, I should say. As far as we do have our executive board, we meet once a month to determine agenda items for the full board, which also meets monthly. And then we have our annual meeting in September. But you can see our membership of the board there, and Dan is also a member from the supervisor perspective for the board. So current active committees, I think it's important that you know what we're involved in. Any rural EDC, like Polk County, so whether it's Pierce or St. Croix or Barron, there's 3 top initiatives right now: housing, it's workforce, and it's broadband. There's lots of other things that spin out of that, but those are the 3 primary objectives of just about any rural EDC right now. So one of the things we're doing and that the county participated in pre-COVID was a housing study. So unfortunately, as that housing study was being rolled out, we also then hit the pandemic. So it got shelved basically for a while. We've re-engaged with that. I put together a housing committee at the end of the pandemic. We've now been able to have some deliverables that you'll see a little bit later. But that housing committee is active right now and looking for ways to work with the local municipalities to develop more housing, attract developers, and attract opportunities for people to invest in new housing. The Workforce Marketing Committee, they've been very busy, as you'll see in a minute with some of the deliverables that we're doing. We're trying to attract workforce to the Polk County area, not any specific industry per se, but just to show them how great of a lifestyle and great job opportunities that we have here in Polk County. Parks and Trails Advisory Group, probably everyone's familiar with that. The Polk County EDC has a seat on that because obviously anything related to tourism and our parks and our recreational opportunities impacts tourism as well as it does our economy. The Greater St. Croix Valley Partnership is really the local EDC group. It's actually headed by Excel Energy, but it is 5 other local EDCs that get together on a monthly basis. During the pandemic, we actually got together quite a bit more to share ideas and resources as things were going on quite quickly during the pandemic and businesses were looking for response tools and what they were going to do. HITBEC, so Northwest International Business. As you guys know, that's part of the funding that you give to us. We pay for half of that involvement, which is $1,500 a year, and I do go to their quarterly meetings. Youth Apprenticeship Steering Committee, the Osceola Economic Vitality Committee, and then I also, within that, head up the subcommittee of the housing opportunities within Osceola, and then the Osceola Industrial Development Corporation, which heads up their industrial. So looking at what was done during the pandemic, that's obviously a huge part of economic development. Some of these numbers, depending on the paperwork you've seen, have been shared already. But there were a lot of grant opportunities. There were a lot of phone calls. There were a lot of extremely nervous business owners. I mean, it seems like we've kind of graduated past that rather quickly, but for a long time, my phone rang and there were people just wondering what to do. And I think in a way, we've kind of forgotten about those initial months of the pandemic when we just didn't know what we know now. And these programs were coming out. They didn't know how to implement them, how to apply for them. All of that kind of funneled through the EDC in some way, shape, or form. So this just gives you an idea of the dollars that benefited Polk County. I can honestly say that EDC did not touch all these dollars. We obviously have our partners that we work with, the WEDC, the Regional Business Fund, but I do have some job statistics there tied to these numbers that are approximations, but pretty close, I believe, as to the jobs that have been retained or saved due to these funds that we were able to facilitate into the county, and also those that are going to be created into the future because of those funds. So I led the countywide business recovery task force during the pandemic. So that was something actually that began because as businesses were wanting and starting to think about, how do I reopen? How can I reopen safely? We can't stay closed any longer. We need to do something. If you can remember back in those days, again, it seems so long ago now, but it really wasn't that long ago. We've moved along quickly, but we did develop a task force that I led that was comprised of 15 people, which was county leads, departmental leads, including Vince and a few others, local business leaders, and then the chamber leaders from the local chambers of commerce that were engaged as well. One of the deliverables of that was we designed a 15-page booklet that we distributed throughout the county, made it available on all our websites, got it out as much as we could to those that had outlines and resources they could use to safely reopen their business. Obviously, as the EDC, we deployed I had a COVID page. Thankfully, I just took that down here in the last 2 weeks or so. Those COVID resources aren't called upon as much. So there's really no need for that COVID page, but there was a page specifically right on the homepage dedicated to COVID response. What can you do as a business owner, a small business? What grants are available? All those types of things. And then, of course, regular and collaboration with the regional EDCs, Momentum West, WEDC, and all the other organizations that we partner with as well. So deliverables beyond what we've already talked about is, I just wanted to show you a few of the deliverables. This was unobtainable before, but during the pandemic, I launched a business parks research page. So now if you're a business owner or a site selection person or a developer of some sort and you want to come to the county, this information wasn't available. In fact, it took a long time to pull this information together from the various entities. But you can now go to our website, you can look in this, and you can see, like, let's just pick on Milltown. You can see in Milltown, there's not only where the current industrial park is, but the red area is what is currently available. So Milltown happens to be in a great position. They have 20 acres that are currently available. I happen to know Schaefer Manufacturing is also expanding kind of behind their facility there. But what this proof that you really couldn't find anywhere else in the county, which kind of surprised me when I started this project, is that there's 158 acres of developable land within our industrial parks within Polk County. There's 17 sites available, varying anywhere from 3 acres to 20 acres. So all of that is very important as we get contacted for the EDC for those that are interested in coming to our county, wanting to invest in our county. And yes, you could have gone to the different village clerks or whatever and individually try and find that information out. This makes it searchable right within our site. So a very good tool that we developed. And I know that, we track our website, of course, has been hit probably more so than any other page in our site right now. I won't go into HubSpot, there's a link there, but just in the interest of time, we deployed a new customer resource management tool, which was not available before. We basically just had a large database of names. And I'm not throwing any predecessors under the bus when I discuss this stuff before Vince got demoted to administrator. So we really didn't have a way to track or be accountable or know exactly, for transparency's sake, who did you contact when. HubSpot that we have implemented takes every email that the EDC receives, takes every conversation I have, we can log it in there, and we know who we contacted when, what the conversations were. So this has long-term value for the county beyond me being here. 10 years from now, somebody's standing in this spot where I am, and they'll have access to those tools within HubSpot. They'll know the conversations that took place. As you know, with some of the economic development priorities, some of these initiatives take years from conception to completion. And there's a lot of steps in that time frame that can lose track if you don't have proper tracking tools. So HubSpot builds out that ability for us to be more transparent and accurate with the type of information and follow up in the right order with those contacts. We reconfigured and updated our large single source EDC database. So again, before there was just one large list of 800 and some names. Now that is segmented. So if I need to reach commercial real estate agents that are interested in properties and I want to promote a certain property, I can do that through our MailChimp marketing tool. Same with schools. I can contact just that schools or just municipal leaders. I've segmented that list, and that was not done before. So our communication and the way that we communicate is much more targeted and strategized to reach the exact audience that we need to get better response out of it. We launched a Google business listing site. Just got a listing, or just a report this morning. 122 people during the month of June came to our Google business site, which didn't even exist months ago. So what that means is they're picking from that site into our EDC site. Those are people throughout the country or locally that are looking for information in Polk County, and they're driving to the EDC site. So that tool, along with the launch of a YouTube channel, which will be important for some video productions that I'm going to be telling you. And then, of course, work directly with Momentum West. They did a video project during the pandemic that involved going to their 10 different counties that they serve, but I solicited them to come to Polk County in certain instances to interview certain people, and that'll be part of that research, that series of 5 videos that they'll be putting out to promote this whole region. So Polk County will be featured in there. So deliverables so far. Letting participate in the St. Croix Valley legislative days this year due to the pandemic was virtual. First time that was done. Was actually very interactive, was actually easier to get our legislators, our representatives, and our senators online and actually do an online meeting with them than it was to try and get in a bus and get down to Madison and get in their office. So that model might be repeated even without the pandemic. Hosted Polk County webinar for the Housing Committee. So like I said before, we're kind of re-energizing that housing need. Along with that, we also orchestrated what was called a crash seminar, which was an acronym for something, in Osceola to address their housing need as well. And then I do want to just take the minute that this video is going to play here. This is something that will be posted soon on our website, but this is something that we want to do more of additionally, which is part of the presentation this morning, where some of these additional dollars will be going. Sorry, I forgot my job. I was supposed to mute myself after that. That video is obviously targeted at the site selector, the person that's interested in building out maybe in the industrial parks or in that Highway 8 corridor. Again, just trying to drive that interest into our area. That was a sponsored project by one of our board members, but a local company sponsored that project, as you saw at the end there. That's something that we'd like to do more as the EDC and maybe even make it countywide. There was a reason why that was St. Croix specific, but there's no reason we can't do the same thing for numerous different parcels of land or different opportunities throughout our county. So also welcomed a few new businesses to the county. Sunshine Fitness has numerous facilities throughout Polk County. They just opened our new one in Balsam Lake, probably a little over a year ago, new one in Amory just a few months ago, new brewery downtown. Marine and Auto Custom Interiors is the new building you see going in along Highway 8. These are all businesses that I've been engaged with a lot of times through the Regional Business Fund because they got funding through that. And they turned to us to set up those meetings and to make those introductions. Last but not least, new website, which is directly driven towards, it stands alone from the WEDC or the Polk County EDC site. This is a new website which is meant to drive people to Polk County for our workforce opportunities here. So it's a lifestyle site, talks about the great opportunities here. It's got a catchy URL called Prosper in Polk. You'll come to this site and you'll be able to make different connections and get a feel for what our county is about. So you can build a better life in Polk County. You can scroll through. You can see some very attractive statistics about our county. Small town living, big city access. This is going to be something that is stage 2 of our project, if you will. These are various members and non-members of the EDC. We want, to represent everybody. But eventually, we're going to be leveraging this to let these companies connect to this and be able to list their jobs that they have as a specific company. We don't want this to be a job board that somebody here needs to manage. We want it to be something that they can use to promote their business through the URL or just through their own job opportunities. We're having a contest assigned to this that I'll go through in a minute, talking about the lifestyle. You can request specific information about Polk County if you'd like to live here, some quotes about the site. If you want to work in Polk County, you can download the profile sheet, 2-page sheet on all the profile statistics of Polk County. And then, of course, the tourism aspect, we link right there. It says view our visitor's guide. As soon as, I'm not sure if you'll be promoting the new website that you're working on or not yet, but as soon as that's ready, we'd like to link to that. But in the meantime, there's an electronic version of what Colleen was just holding up there. So it goes out and it goes through the whole county as to what's available here for recreational opportunities as well. So this will have a social media component to it. I'll get into that as we get into the future deliverables too, but there will be a social media component to this to drive more people to it. And then also I just want to promote the fact that it does have another kind of promotional opportunity to drive people to the site. Instead of just having people come to the site and read about it and not necessarily do anything with it, to get people to register and to build that database of names, we're starting a contest called Experience Polk in Person, and I've worked with the new owners of the Balsam Lake Lodge and Supper Club. They're giving us 2-night stay at their place. So all you have to do is put in your name, your email address, and your current zip code so that we know you're truly coming from outside the county and not just looking for a nice 2-night stay at the lodge. So we then can leverage those names with local businesses as well and leverage the numbers that we're driving. Another city did this and had over 500 entries. So we're hoping to be able to do the same. Once they register for this contest, go back to the, once they register for that, we didn't want it to necessarily just stop there. We wanted an opportunity for them to further engage with the county. So I worked with all the local chambers, and you'll see that sheet on the left there is they'll get an email response from us once they register, and attached to that email response saying, thanks for visiting us, come see us soon. They'll have this sheet of different offers that just anybody, whether you win the contest or not, can take advantage of. 10% off this, buy one entree, get a second free. Local chambers all help put that together, and that'll be a downloadable item from the website if you register. And then also next to that, we consider our competition kind of Minnesota in the metro market. A lot of people migrating out of that. They'll also be able to download a 2-page sheet from the WEDC that talks about the advantages of Wisconsin over Minnesota. How am I doing on time? I've lost track of time. Am I going long?
We actually were out a minute ago.
Yeah.
4 minutes. Already working with new businesses. There's new businesses coming to town. There's a new business that bought the F&A dairy that we've already worked with. They're on board with us. They have some different initiatives that they want to go as well. It's a company called Sweet Additions. You're probably seeing more activity if you get through that area. There will be more coming. and they plan to be in production and have 15 employees with the opportunity to grow to 30 plus within 2 years. Equius Magnificus is a new, they make equestrian products, and they have purchased a facility in the St. Croix Falls Industrial Park. They'll be moving in next spring and hope to be up and running by next summer. They're putting over $500,000 into their building to make it what they need. Diamond King Smoker, another company that's coming to Balsam Lake, they're actually going to set up shop across the street in the grocery store. Worked with them over numerous months, gave them a tour of Polk County, and they finally settled on that building there. So we're going to launch the Prosper and Polk website. What you just saw is not officially launched yet. You can go out to Prosper and Polk and see it, but we're really kind of saving the initial launch so our social media campaign is ready. We're going to be producing a special just Polk County video. So what you saw was St. Croix County promotional, just that Highway 8 corridor more for development. We're also going to be producing a video that just promotes the county. On July 8th, I'll be touring the county with the new WEDC director. We have 2 upcoming webinars to help our local businesses, one on security and cyber fraud, the other on housing development options, which we'll be giving out to municipalities and local businesses. And then, of course, I'm constantly working on expanding broadband with local vendors and with the county. A lot of grant dollars available right now, so there's a lot of activity around broadband. University Year is another program that we're going to be working on this year to help rebrand and re-identify what our county represents to those that are coming into it. And then also another kind of spin-off project is the rail line that runs through Dresser and Osceola has been talked of potentially being abandoned. Putting together a committee to try and find out what everyone else knows about that and how we can pull that together to make it viable, not only for the businesses that are there, but the businesses that are coming in. So investing in the future of Polk County. As you saw in the paperwork, we're very appreciative of the $45,000 that you funded us in the past. We're asking for an additional 15. These are the reasons why we are asking for that. A lot of the tools are now in place to really propel Polk County into that next level with our CRM tools, our technology that's available, our segregated mailing, all those things that we can do a better job reaching out and reaching people for Polk County. So we want to leverage those new tools that we've now got in place. We want to develop new communication and marketing strategies to help promote what already is available here in Polk County to draw those additional businesses in. We also want additional resources to allow for continued growth while not losing our current base. And to do that and to leverage all these opportunities, I've been spending a lot of time administering and doing a lot of this. And I don't want to lose our current base and just become something that's just an online presence. I still want to be out and about. So we are looking for some of that additional 15 to go towards an administrative assistant or some type of assistant that can take and run with a lot of the administrative just functioning of a lot of these tools that are now in place. And of course, the needs from 2017, when that first 45,000 was given to Polk County EDC, the economic opportunity has changed dramatically, especially with the pandemic. I can't statistically show anything yet, but I think everyone can just feel the pressure on this area. I know that there's a lot more businesses and stuff interested in our industrial parks. You talk to any realtor and you understand the needs of the area as far as housing and things go. So, sorry if that went a little long. Questions?
Housing and things maybe leads into this. The things, to my mind, would include public transportation. I think we have a huge vacuum in Polk County with virtually no public transportation. I don't know if that figures into the housing study at all or anything that you're doing at this point in time, but I would greatly like to see some attention addressed to that lack, what I perceive to be a major lack in our community.
Great, thank you. I can honestly say right now that public transportation is on the radar, if you will. There are some initiatives, even a rail line coming out of Eau Claire up into this area and different things like that. But overall, just Polk County wise, as the EDC, other than that rail spur, which is more business related, we don't have a lot of transportation on our radar right now.
I think it relates to workforce, but it also relates to senior citizens, et cetera, et cetera. I think it's a crying need, frankly.
I was thinking that, I believe that public transportation, senior citizens, job opportunities, everything. I think that's a huge. You have anything, community, I didn't see anything in there, have anything to do with the agriculture community? Backbone of Polk County?
There are agricultural grants that I've worked with people on. There's also, Amory has launched a program for agritourism. And I worked with Paul Schaefer. Him and I work together a lot from the Amory EDC. They're launching an agritourism site. When the WEDC new rep is in town on the 19th, I'll be taking him over to see Paul, and I'm sure we'll be talking about that as well. But agritourism is actually something that's kind of a newer thing that people are really getting into, where you can come and you can experience farming for those that haven't, or maybe it's a unique farm like llamas or something like that. So there is that going on.
The plant and dresser that shoot them coming in. Connected with agriculture.
Yeah, the Sweet Additions, not only did they buy the facility, but they bought all the land and went with it. So, yeah, they're very interested in the agribusinesses.
My question again, Terry, would just be like, how do we collaborate better within the agencies we fund? You know, I think you're doing an outstanding job. CEDC, what it's done over the last 10 years is huge. I support all the funding, but again, when I see just hearing people talk and call, and you get a little more as the chair, you get a few more calls on issues is, you know, how is EDC working with tourism? And it's back to, I'm asking Terry.
I know, but I didn't realize that we have one of our board members from the museum is also on the
Right.
EDC board.
And I know there's some of that stuff goes on, but we don't really have it like that's policy. This is policy that, you know, as a county, you know, it's great. You're doing a great job right now. Sharon's a great person to be on the board. It's nice that everyone's doing things, but it doesn't say you have to do them. So would you have any objections to the county putting more requirements in your MOUs? Like, I know like Barron County EDC is in charge of tourism. Right? You talk a lot about tourism. Polk County's about tourism. You got ag issues. Do you have any objections to the county looking at our MOUs and saying that there needs to be that collaboration, like board members have to sit on other boards and there's a requirement that there is. So for example, you collaborate, you said, well, when their website goes live, we'll like to link you to that. Do you attend their meetings? Do you guys go to things? Do you know what tourism's doing? Does tourism know what you're doing? Those are kind of my big questions. And we don't need to spend any time on it, but that's just.
Well, just to quickly answer, we would welcome that opportunity.
Sure.
EDC is all about collaboration.
Sure.
Obviously, we touch a lot of pieces throughout the county. So Colleen and I are in fairly regular contact, but no, we don't attend each other's meetings. I have been invited to their meetings. I haven't been able to attend
Sure.
all of them, but yeah, I think that it makes sense.
Thanks, Terry. Right, the tourism council's up, but Terry, you was like 8 of your minutes, so. Sorry.
I owe you.
We'll try to talk.
I'm gonna let Earl start with the financial stuff while I pass out your packet.
Okay. Thank you for this today. Go through this fairly fast. Tourism Council made up of 7 people at this point. Somewhere in,
Do you guys have one of these sheets here? Yeah. Oh, tourism information. I got it. Okay.
somewhere along why or so we will vote on adding more positions for the tourism council. We do have some candidates for that.
William Johnson is our president. I'm the treasurer, Earl Bucket. Denise Nadkowski. Last year, Dan Schulson. And those two people are instrumental in getting the website and social media program up and running. That's why we went out. Roxanne White, and Council for Marston, and Joe Demling is the Polk County representative. Went through and I added up the hours that we have spent volunteer, and these are all volunteer positions. Added up the volunteer hours that we had spent in the last year. Volunteer work. Not quite a bit because we've been working on the website.
Earl, you need to speak up louder. I can't hear you back here. Please.
What? Just it's feeling kind of cramped.
That's better.
Okay. So we got two-person, all of the council members are passionate about tourism in Polk County and growing tourism. They're dedicated, very hard work. Talk a little bit about financial information. We have a budget next year that we're hoping to achieve of $123,000 in revenue. We're asking the county for $70,000. That's 57% of that. Room tax, $24,000. Grants, $10,000. We get $7,000 from our gift shop. And there's another $12,000 that is tourism guide, trail passes, contributions, and that kind of thing. So that adds up to $123,000 in revenue. Our spending is right now budgeted at $122,000. $105,000 of that is to keep the information center open. That's payroll, primarily payroll, but it's all utilities, phones, and $17,000 is available for promotional activities. Spending promotional activities could be ads that we run, it could be social media program, the website. That's what we have available. A little bit on tourism statistics. Get this information from the Wisconsin Department of Tourism. Direct visitor spending, $83 million last year. That's down 13% for Polk County. The Northwest region, which is remember how many counties? 13 counties in this area, is down 19%. And Wisconsin, state of Wisconsin is down 28%. Total business sales, 143 million. Polk County is down 13%. Northwest region, 17. Wisconsin was down 22%. State and local taxes, 8.1 million. Polk County is down 16%. Northwest region down 19%. And Wisconsin was down 28%. Labor income, 24.4 million. Polk County was down 4%. Northwest region, 8%. Wisconsin was 13%. Employment, 1,000 tourism-related jobs. Polk County was down 15%. Northwest region was down 17%. And Wisconsin was down 22%. So in all those categories, which is what we use to measure how we're doing, Polk County was kind of a blessing in disguise, was down less than the Northwest region and less than the state of Wisconsin. Doing something right, where there's something about this area that allowed more tourism spending than the rest of the state. We like to think that we're doing something right. I think we're doing something right. Whether what we're doing affected the numbers that much, I don't know. Okay. Polk County Information Center. The Polk County Information Center is an organization that collects marketing materials and information from tourism-related businesses and attractions, and then turns around and distributes that information to consumers who have an interest in coming to the area through email. We make that contact, email, through the U.S. mail, online, and verbally through phone or in-person conversation. That's what they do. They're a clearinghouse, for information. And what's really important about that is it's a direct marketing activity that has a very high success rate. If you walk into the information center and start talking to the person behind the desk, they're going to ask you, what are you interested in seeing? If you say gallery, they're going to pull out the gallery information. If you say I want ATV trails or snowmobile trails or whatever it is you want, people walk in there with questions and they leave with 12 or 14 brochures. And all of those things are directly related to what they're interested in. That happens through interpersonal discussion. And they do a really good job. It's amazing to see when people walk out with a handful of stuff. Now, they get 20 brochures. They probably aren't going to do all those things. They're going to do some. And so the hit rate being the rate at which they do something because they went into that information center or talked to them on the phone or emailed them, is pretty high. You know, if you spend $1,000 on an ad, the hit rate is going to be 1% or less. Spend $1,000 in the information center, and your hit rate is in the 10 to 15%. So it's a very successful direct marketing technique. I don't have any data to prove this, but I attribute our ability to keep the decrease in tourism spending low, in a better position than the rest of the state or Northwest region is directly related to opening information. We did not ever shut down. We closed the doors to the public, but we manned the phone and we, for this whole pandemic, we have been open. Okay, website and social media program. Phase 1, design and launch a new website dedicated to supporting tourism in Polk County. I was hoping we'd be up by now, but we've had some little glitches. We are scheduled to launch next week. So, and this is a huge website. There's a lot of data. There's a lot of links. It's huge. The developer, when I talked to him last, he said, when I started this, I didn't understand how big this was going to be. It's taken a lot longer. And a lot of that time has been spent by the Tourism Council in checking and verifying information. So we're just about through phase 1. Phase 2, go back through all that information and verify its accuracy. It's part of it. Links to websites have to be checked. Addresses, telephone numbers have to be checked. Everything has to be checked. We're going to launch a social media. As soon as that launches, we'll launch a social media promotion campaign. We have over 100 social media posts ready to go. Social media is designed to drive people to the website. The website is designed to drive people to the Polk County information, which is our most effective tool. So getting a good social media program, we have 100 social media posts. We have about 50 blogs right now ready to go. These things will start hitting several a week, starting next week. As soon as we launch, we'll launch the social media program. But there's a lot of work to do. If you go out to the website, once it's launched, there'll be a lot of things without photos. Collecting photos and getting business photos. Phase 2 will take around 6 months before we're sure. Phase 3 is how can we turn that website into something that generates revenue for the Polk County Tourism Council. We would like to generate enough revenue to pay for the upkeep and maintenance and upgrades in the website. That's our goal. We can get a little more, great, but we just need to try to cover the cost. And that's all I have. I think Liz going to talk a little bit.
Well, thank you. It's always fun to see some faces out there. And to address, I'm Colleen Gifford from Foxville from the Polk County Information Center. And William Johnson was planning on coming, but his significant other had a car accident with a car and deer for several weeks, so he is carried. So, Mr. Nelson, to address our collaboration, I want to speak to that. I want to just jump right into that. In our visitor guide, EBC puts an ad in. We have been collaborating routinely with our websites because we want to make sure that we, work together and have everybody covered. As far as museums, that is one of the most popular things that people come in and want to know where the museums are. My husband is on their museum boards. I've had him go open the museum pre-COVID to let people in and tour around. They have a full page ad that they put in here every year. And another event that we do on a regular basis is our Fall Tourism Conference, which is especially geared for collaboration at the county level. And we have offered this conference for the past 4 years to area businesses, county board members, city officials, tourism people, just to collaborate and have them network, because a lot of times something that's happening in Clear Lake, they don't let everybody know about. And we have the state officials come and tell us what's new in tourism. Last time we had it, we had Sarah Meany, who was the Secretary of Tourism, and update us on data and how they collect data. And they're very advanced at collecting data now. They can, on your smartphone, they can tell where you originated from and how you got here and how you found out about us, which is pretty remarkable. But we got through COVID, I would like to say, because of this guy right behind us. The minute we were given the order of shutdown or reduced hours, he said, okay, we got to come up with it. And you always need to have somebody that really can understand your finances and figure out how you can get it. So in our two annual reports that I provided you with, I provided one from 2019 just to give you a normal kind of our data versus COVID year. And just like the museum told you, they saw an increase in their web traffic. That's exactly what we did too. We saw an increase when we were shut down to the public of web traffic. It didn't mean that they didn't go away. They were sitting on at their homes, on their computers, finding places to do, things to do, where to go. And we had a lot of web traffic. We sent out a lot of packets and everything, but we lost a lot of, county-wide events that people specifically come to see. And so we lost that. And our staff was laid off 2 months, basically. And it explains where our ad dollars were going the last couple of years. We have gotten a very good team of people on our board that is collaborating with how should we spend our ad dollars. So in your packets, you have samples of ads that we've put in snowmobile magazines, ATV magazines. We've got some going forward, horse ads, family friendly ads for hiking, doing fishing. Does anybody know how many miles of lakeshore we have? How many? 1,000? 3,500. I called Land and Water to get the exact. I knew how many lakes we had, but anyway, and that promotional stuff has really paid off. We have sent over double what our packets go out regularly this far into the year. We are also collecting data when they request packets where they got their information. Many times they're from an ad, they're from our Facebook, they're from the internet search, and a lot of times too, if people have a great experience coming up here, they will come back, they'll tell their family, they'll tell their friends, their kids will grow, they'll want to come back up. So that's how people find us. So that's, we survived COVID and we're bouncing back bigger and better. And it's great to see all the businesses, doing better too. So anyway, does anybody have any questions for us? Our request is $70,000 like it has been for the past several years. And,
Question. Again, same as, and I support tourism. Hardest thing I have is some of the wonky numbers we get from the state, but I know you're using their numbers. I have asked before in the past to explain Polk County. Can someone explain the tourism dollar number? And you can't, they won't, no one tells you how they get that number. But I know our sales tax has gone up in Polk County. So, and I see our local businesses all are packed. So tourism, even though someone says they're down, I think you could ask any local business in my communities that I represent, not one of them would say tourism is down. Every single one would say tourism is double than it was even a year ago, most of them, just making that point. Again, my thing today is I'm going to be looking at is, are you meeting your requirements of the MOU with the board of directors being broader than what you currently have? And again, I'm going to say my biggest appointment with your organization is that your president, again, this last year undermined county policy by going against the Stour Trail. And that was a big concern as a county board supervisors, that we make policy and then an outside agency we fund. Your president of your organization sits on a non-motorized committee at the state level. And he went and actually proposed with the DNR to yank the MOU away, Stour Trail. So I have big concerns of your organization that you would have a president that is actually undermining county policy. So my two questions are, is what are you going to do about the president that did that? My other question is, are you following the MOU with the broad requirement of having equestrian representative on your board? I believe it's a UTV representative on your board, And I've heard some comments out there, but I'd just like to hear from you guys. Are you going to meet the MOU requirements before the end of the year? You will. Okay. And I do support tourism 100%. Just want to make that clear.
William Johnson, we were totally unaware of what had occurred. And he had done that as an independent, not representing.
I understand, but he is still the president of your board. And are you guys going to take action to not allow that to happen with board members? Is that a policy that board members can go out and undermine county policy? You guys do anything about it?
I want to put this. William himself regrets standing up. We haven't done anything about it.
Sure. But did I hear an apology that that's not going to happen, or did I hear, is that what I'm reading between the lines?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. That's all I wanted to hear.
It shouldn't have happened. Oh, and
And the board,
on the MOU
yeah,
requirements, you're voting on bylaws to the council in July. And I know William has been talking with Doug Johnson. Not sure who we have. But Andy, yet, William has been talking. So the plan is
need that requirement on the MOU
that sometime
this year,
this
yeah,
summer,
sure.
And we have not met live,
Thank you very much.
still Zooming. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I guess that's the end of our presentations.
Yes. Mentioned in the previous committee, we did not give a specific invite to the Fair Society because of the recent situation in which they've asked not to be communicated. Chad did send them in May a request for information on budget, which Chad, you could speak up, but we did not receive anything from them regarding the budget request for next year.
That's correct. I sent each of the outside agencies a letter, with requests for their budget requests and all that deadlines and how it was going to proceed. And included in those letters and stuff. It was the only one I get a response from.
So my question, Chair, then, I know this is just presentation. So when we get to reviewing agency funding requests, since they're not on there, we're just, at this point, we're just not going to deal, there's nothing to vote on, right? For any funding for the fair in the future.
Right. And Chad, I don't think we have any decision-making for the funding request today. It's just more of a, is that question and answer an opportunity to discuss?
That's,
Okay, fine.
yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's what this is the GG gets the additional funding. Then we'll put together the budget. And when they start working through the budget with the administrator's recommendations, they know what your request was and they can make any adjustments to it as they see fit.
At this point, each group has indicated how much they're requesting. So do we need to have at this meeting further discussion on budget requests?
Well, we have under number 17 that we're going to review the external agencies funding request. Number 8 was a presentation and a discussion. And I mean, if we're going to do number 17, shouldn't we do it now? Should we go through a ton of other things and then go back to it.
That makes sense.
So why don't we do that now? Why don't we review the request and there'll be no, yes, no more questions or anything from the agencies. I mean, it's just gonna be the committee. So just, let's start out with economic development.
Can
Perhaps.
I ask one question?
Nope.
We didn't have a presentation on, Wisconsin Central. West Central.
Yeah, and in fact, I forgot to mention this.
Representative, so
We
we
did
can
get,
ask.
we did get a letter from them and they were apologetic. They have their board meeting and executive committee meeting at the same time. So they asked if they could, if there's another time they could present, possibly next.
Just for the executive committee is what I'm here from, and to ask the question there is, what are we getting for that $34,195? That they haven't helped us with the trails and other things, so what are we actually gonna get for this money?
Yeah, and we can't ask anyone that, right? That's what you're saying.
Right, I would, but they
So
will,
we're not gonna review their.
Right.
But we could still, because it's on the, we can talk about what they're asking for. But we just didn't get a presentation from
but they,
But I was
but
gonna
they
ask,
want to do that later.
they wanna present that to us, so
Right.
we know what we're getting now.
Right.
All right. That's why I stayed for
Yeah,
that.
yeah, no, they wanted to be here.
them. Got the same question.
So it's not gonna get missed.
No.
Okay.
All right, let's take them in the, well, actually, we could probably take them in the order there.
You don't need a motion to change the agenda right now, right, Russ? You're just doing it.
No. I think it says in there we
Sure.
He's the boss. He can do that.
can. All right, how about, what we should do is maybe get maybe a motion that we recommend, well, from this committee. How about the Polk County Historical Society? They were looking for 25,000 more on the. Want to make a?
I'll make a motion. I got discussion on it, but I will make a motion to approve that.
Second.
You know, my discussion is gonna be that we have the ability to, with the administrator and with Chad and Corporation Council, that we have the ability to work on their MOUs better this year, that there is requirements for board participations, that the boards actually have members on every board, that these agencies are truly sitting at the board meetings. Like, I think tourism should have a seat or excuse me, museum should have a seat at tourism and should have a seat at economic development. And those two agencies should have a seat at their boards. I would just, that'd be the one request I would have, is that we tighten that requirement up than just that we have good people doing a good job right now. That would actually be in policy.
We did hear several of them today, basically came back to getting people, tourists and come to Polk County. So there is overlap there. One discussion, and maybe this is just county administrator, or maybe this finance director. There is some concern with funding an employee. So we can give an amount of money, but as soon as we say we're going to pay for this position, then all of a sudden there's some connection to the county that says they're an employee of ours, and hence then we got to be involved with everything else, the benefits, the government requirements.
Sure, so we don't want to tie it to an employee.
We don't want to do
We
that.
just want to say additional funding.
Right.
Because I noticed we basically fund the payroll of tourism. You know, that's our dollar amount for tourism is almost the same as their payroll.
Yeah.
But we don't say it, but we just give them the money to cover payroll.
And also, I know last year when historic, and this will just be my comments for you guys to take or leave, because it's early in the process, but when Historical Society, great cause, great organization, they're doing a lot of good things. gave them half last year because they came on hard with a large request of 50,000 or so. We gave them half of it, said, let's see what you can do with it, with the hope and anticipation that they could do more in terms of fundraising and figure out how they're going to pay for that. And it's the same with another request to say, hey, we need more money because they want to pay for a person. What I'd like to see is an organization say, when we take more money, it's translating into more support from the public, which results in more contributions or more grants or those types of things. So I'm always cautious when an outside organization comes in and says, we want this much more to pay for this. And I want to know, what are you doing to pay for that? It's not just the county's government to pay for an expansion in a program because they want to do more. I mean, it's got to be a partnership. That's just my input.
So, I know last year they came with a great presentation to fund this. This is my understanding on a trial basis. And so this year they've come back, and it seems like they've done well with it. And this year they're coming back and kind of asking us to double that support. So, two, I would like to see, we have some financial information here, but we don't really have, is this the complete financial information? Is this part of your financial
Keep
information?
your comments directed to the committee. We're not.
Okay, yeah, so anyways, I see some financial information and I appreciate that. And by all appearances, they have done a good job and been good stewards of the county's contribution in the last year. But I guess I would like to see some more complete information than what was submitted. And maybe that's something that could be part of it.
Right. That's unfortunately Chad, again, on vacation, trying to do this from a car, but he's really the financial analyst to look at their numbers and so on. And I know from a historical society, they have money in their checking account, like all the organizations do.
So, I mean, one possibility, guys, on two notes. Vince brought up the employee thing. I do have concerns about that. I would recommend that when we're getting into these organizations where we're giving them amount of money and they're going to hire staff with it, that we give them a sum total contribution each year, and then how they spend it is their choice, as opposed to us saying we're going to line item give you $50,000 for an employee. It invites a lot of problems with the IRS, especially because earlier in May, the Biden administration changed a lot of rules about contract employees and employer liability and all that. So if we're going to say, just like with tourism, we give them $70,000 a year, it would be better with museum to say we're going to give them $65,000 a year or whatever our total equals. And then in regards to their checking, they do have money in their checking. What you could do is you could always do a resolution this year that says, when we do the budget, it's contingent upon things. And you could say, we'll fund them up to this much if they're unable to raise the money for it. We could always put that safeguard in there to provide them the funding in the event they're not able to. That's always an option.
I guess I'd like to piggyback a little bit on some of this on funding. They came to us last year, asked for funding, and I'm fully in support of that. I think they've done a wonderful job moving it forward. But one of the big selling features to us last year was the fact that we're going to generate this much more grant money to help fund this. And it sounds like the question I asked, and it sounds like that grant money that's came has been a little more consistent to what's been in the past, and it takes time and there's other places for it. But one of the reasons to get that administrator was to grow that. And I think I can certainly support moving at this point, but I think it's something we need to continually watch. If as a county, we're going to support this, we need to see if that truly becomes an issue, that we do generate more grant money from an administrator and the things that they said they were going to do to raise money.
Chair, I'd also kind of piggyback on Vince's comments too, whether we fund the whole thing or not, I just wanted to have the discussion and make the motion to approve it. Doesn't mean we have to give them the whole thing. The one thing I look at about it a little bit different is it is our building, we own it, unlike tourism. We don't have nothing to do with the building, we fund them. Nothing there. Right? They do brochures, they do marketing, but I feel like having someone taking care of a property of ours, having someone in there all the time, keeping it open. I know our staff does a lot of work out there and they just did a great job doing a retaining wall out there. I don't know really who gets the credit for that. I've heard a few different things floating around the county who was supervising the job, just saying. So again, I'm good with Fran. What you're saying too is how do we hold them accountable? And when we do fund these outside agencies, I'm totally on board with how do we structure that to make sure that they know that, hey, got to do this if you want that. And to just get the same dollars you've been getting for every year, and now you have a director, that would concern me, right? That the director should be working on getting more of those grant dollars, is what you're saying, right? Exactly, yeah.
And that's what we were told. One of the reasons to bring the administrator in
Yeah.
was to generate more grant money and raise more funding and do more
Right.
things. And they're obviously doing some of that.
Right.
But I think before we just start throwing money at it, we better understand if that's going to continue, because if all of a sudden we throw that money in, well, we don't need the grant money now because we got this money from the county. And I know that's not their intent, but it's something to keep.
So maybe the thing is, like Chad said, is maybe there is more teeth in the MOU or a resolution that, we will vote on later. So, I would certainly be willing to amend my motion to say, or we make an amendment to it to say that, we would approve the funding as long as our board gets to approve the MOU or a resolution must be tied to that funding. We're going to have to approve a resolution before we give them the additional money. Would that be, you could, something like that.
Yeah, we're actually not approving the money.
Yeah.
We're only recommending.
We're recommending it,
That it be placed in the administrator's budget that then would be presented to
but
you.
we just want to make sure we let the administrator know that we're going to require more than just him putting it in the budget.
Right, and we have in the past, guys, done a budget resolution that had contingencies for certain lines of funding. So we can figure out some kind of benchmarks for them to achieve and put that in the final budget resolution in November.
Would be a measurement to put in the MOU,
Correct.
that you want certain measurements, certain things met.
So we're gonna have a chance to kick this can again
Yeah.
and to review all that, right? We're just not approving it, that it's gonna just slide through. There's gonna be some parts to it to make it work. Good with that idea.
With the review of the MOU.
Yeah, I mean,
That's why-
Yeah, basically, you're just telling the administrator today that you want us to include it in the recommended budget, but figure out how to tie conditions to it.
Correct.
I don't know that you necessarily need to vote on that
Okay.
as two separate committees, because you are then a form of the county board. But I think the message is, received, so, yeah.
We
I don't
shouldn't
know that
vote
you need
at
to
all.
take any formal action, even
In the
though.
executive, sure. On any of this, we shouldn't, as the executive, we shouldn't vote.
I just have one comment. I guess as general government, we may not get all the same information about the MOUs that the executive committee has to kind of know what type of financial things are addressed in that and what are not. So that leads to asking some questions maybe. I always, when outside agencies come in for funding, I always like to know they have a fund balance. They have other money sitting in the bank and things like that. And I haven't been given that information. And, like I said, maybe executive committee, if they will use you vet that out and you have that information, but that's something I'd be interested in as well.
The executive, I think that's something, yeah, you just requested into the administrator, and I think before we approve it on the budget, you're gonna get that information to review.
I think it's general.
Yeah, it should be in general government. You bet.
Question, what is the total amount that we would be recommending be included in the 2022 budget resolution?
Well, are you talking about just for the Historical Society, Mr. Pritchard?
Just the Historical Society.
Well, if you put 51,000 in for the personnel cost, and it's going to be roughly in the $70,000 range because we pay utilities, insurance, internet, that kind of stuff down there. So off the top of my head, without adding it all up, it's in the $70,000 range.
Thank you.
There is some CIP projects also for first updates and.
All right, anything more on Historical Society, the motion? Only the general government will be voting. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, carried. All right, how about West Cap? West Cap is looking for the same amount.
Motion to approve.
Any discussion?
You guys did a wonderful job explaining what they did, and I appreciated that very much. Terry went over more.
We'll charge us back then.
All right, all those in favor?
Right?
Opposed? Carries. Economic development. Looking for 15,000 more.
I'll make the motion. Move it.
So that would bring their total funding for 2022 to 60,000.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve it. And
Same condition.
same conditions that we are tightening up the MOUs and that cross collaboration requirement.
Any more discussion? All in favor?
Right.
Opposed? Carries. All right, tourism, looking for the same.
Make a motion that
Which is it? What's the
70.
amount?
Yeah, $70,000, same as last year.
Oh, okay.
Last year was actually 75 because we gave an additional 5,000, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. It was a one-time $5,000 addition.
So I was starting to make a motion to approve that funding, $70,000 recommendation as requested with the same MOU items as the other agencies.
Can you add though that they must meet the current MOU by the end of this year?
Sure, I don't have a problem with that. I'm confident they're going to do that.
And then
So,
I'll second that.
yeah, I'm okay to add that to it.
Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Carries. All right, that'll take us to a report regarding the governor's budget.
You want to do E?
What?
All right, I provided I think the clerk handed it out. I'm sorry.
There is-
17.
I didn't turn the page. There is one more from, who's it from?
Central.
We're gonna wait till they do.
We're gonna wait till they give them an opportunity to assess, unless you have something on Westside Regional Planning Commission, Chad.
Yeah.
Just get
Condition.
It's West Central's letter should be in there. It's essentially what it is every year with the slight increase, and that's actually a statutory increase.
I
think you have to do it no matter what. We should have at least answer to it. Is what
I would not support their budget based on no presentation. So I would, my motion would be to not approve it.
Couldn't do it. It was statutory. You got to do like 2 years at it. So
We
they'll explain that later.
table it till such time they do make a presentation and
I made a motion not to approve it because they're not here. They're not doing a presentation. So get a second. Try yours.
Anyone second that motion? Yeah, now we'll say that motion dies for lack of a second.
I'd like to make a motion that we table consideration of recommendations for funding for West Central Regional Planning. At such time they are able to give us a presentation.
I would say that would be a postpone indefinitely rather than a table. You have to bring it from the table during the same meeting.
Okay, so to postpone, do you have a recommendation on which would be more appropriate?
You could do a postpone to a date certain, but if you don't know when they can, then
Yeah,
postpone
the plan is
indefinitely.
next, but I just want to confirm that.
So maybe postpone to next month's meeting.
Then postpone until our August.
Discussion on the motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Carries. All right, now we can go back to report on the governor's budget.
All
We
right.
gotta do it. Hold on.
Oh, I'm sorry.
What,
I think that maybe we're gonna be here a while longer, so I was just wondering if we could have a short. At some point.
what do you think, Chad? You need a 5-minute break?
Is there a quick trip nearby?
Like 10 minutes. It's up to you guys.
Is Chad getting paid for this right now?
Well, no,
All
not
right,
really.
let's
But
take-
that's part of it.
Let's take 5 minutes then, and then we'll.
No, just get it. Gotta go, you gotta go.
Yeah.
Right?
Guy driving in the car.
Oh.
See Chad.
Are you there, Chad?
I'm here.
All right. Looking for the report on the governor's budget.
Yeah, the clerk hopefully passed out to you guys a 3-page thing I put together. This is the first year I've done this, so I'm not sure how they have been done in the past. What I did is I went through all the omnibus bills and motions from the Joint Finance Committee and pulled out the sections that I thought would be relevant to Polk County and for you to know about. And then following each excerpt, I put in a red subline that basically is a quick summation of what it does. When I put this together yesterday, the governor had still not signed the budget. He signed it this morning about an hour and a half ago. I've been looking through what he signed. The articles say that there's about 50 line item vetoes, but I haven't seen a listing of the vetoes yet. So I'm not sure that everything that is in front of you got through. It looks like he signed most of the budget though. Some of the key highlights I think are important is overall the budget that he signed this morning has a $2 billion tax cut. And that equates to about $100 per property owner in the state. The Veteran Services Grant was increased for the first time in a while from $10,000 to $11,000. So Polk County will get $11,000 this year instead of $10,000. Highway transportation gets a 2% increase in each biennial year. And then there is also a section for a one-time spend of about $100 million to improve roads throughout the state on joint projects. And the other one that I think is really important is TAD funding, which is the diversion funding for CJCC. Well, there's two things. The diversion funding for CJCC was increased this year for the first time in a long time and increased significantly. So we go out to grant for the 5-year grant in a couple months, and now there's a bigger pot of money. There is money in there to create regional crisis beds. That's a big deal for mental health and people in crisis, because I think, as you all have heard before from the sheriff and from me when I was chief deputy, our deputies right now drive all the way to Winnebago if somebody has to be taken to psychiatric observation. So this money would be intended to create regional beds. When this was put up a couple years ago, the idea was they would make 15 beds in Eau Claire. I don't know if that's still part of the plan, but now the money's there. It was vetoed a couple years ago. The other thing that directly affects us as far as funding is they increased the funding for boating and UTV enforcement. So that helps the sheriff's office with their rec deputy. The way those DNR programs work is, say the sheriff puts in 100 hours of boating enforcement a year, you get reimbursed anywhere from 65 to 85% of that cost. So when they increase the pot, it means everybody that puts in is going to take a little more out. So that's a good thing for us. The other thing it did is it created additional grants and funding for local UTV and ATV trail improvements, and also for snowmobile clubs to undertake GIS mapping on snowmobile trails. So all those will have extra impact on Polk County. When I was looking through it a couple minutes ago, I did see a major change the governor made regarding transportation. The legislature was trying to double how much money is put into transportation of the sales tax each year, of the state tax, and they were going to make it permanent. The governor did veto that provision, so there's that extra money for transportation in this budget, but the legislature was trying to make it ongoing, and he vetoed that portion. That's about all I have on it. I just thought you guys might have some questions. I tried to do the red line summation so that it would give you just kind of bullet points through it.
Chad, I just reached out with a text message, and I did hear that the budget did include the Clam Falls Dam, so that is in the governor's budget that he signed this morning.
Okay, yeah, it's in your summation there. I just couldn't find out if it was a veto or not. I still can't find a listing of the 50 vetoes. So
that one apparently didn't get vetoed.
Good. So the $2 million for Clam Falls repair and transition to the county is in the DNR budget.
Right.
Is this the kind of format you guys want to see for this, or what? Because since it's biennial, I haven't been involved in it before.
Yeah, I think everyone's approved of it.
All right, good deal.
All right, how about a review of our recycling ordinance from other counties?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. The committee requested ordinances from other counties that have on recycling, what their ordinance looks like. What I provided you today is the ones, the cover page shows several of the ordinances that we received. Those are circled in orange. The St. Croix County one I got in late here. But on this also, you'll see like Adams County and Barron County. If they have a recycling center or a material recovery center of any kind, that's listed there. St. Croix County does not have a recycling center, nor does Eau Claire, so you can compare the ordinances to that. Once I receive Columbia, Vernon, and a couple others, I'll get those out to the committee. So along with that, I attached our ordinance in the back. And just the resolution that made the Polk County argue with that. So those are for your review as we get going with this and rewrite the ordinance.
That's a lot of information. We're just going to take it home. We're not going to work on it today, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
All Right, that'll be everyone's homework projects. We'll just have it on our agenda next month and we would be prepared. So if we get more information, are you gonna send it to the committees or?
Yes, I will.
All right, we're gonna get a presentation. EMA.
Yeah, are they online?
Hello, everybody. I just wanted to check with the clerk. Do you have copies of the presentation or would you like me to share my screen?
You have it saved.
Okay, excellent.
Right here.
Great. Well, then I will get started. My name is Sarah Schnorr, and I have been with PMA for 15 years. I've met a number of you over the years and have worked with the investment committee and with Amanda, the county treasurer, for a number of years. This is actually Brian's presentation, which will be the next one. And wanted to talk a little bit about the investment side of the business and what we've been doing with the county for the last few years. PMA has really kind of three different core businesses. And I work on the investment side. We also have a bank funding team that is providing outreach on behalf of each of us. And the county, when looking for investments and brokered options, as well as the public finance side, which Brian will cover in the next presentation.
Oh, and I apologize. I don't have the other one. I only have the one for Brian.
Oh, okay. Are you able to give me the ability to share? I can't click on that button.
I can do that right now for you.
There we go. Perfect. Can everybody see my screen? Perfect. Okay. So as I mentioned, we're three different PMA companies serving public entities. On the investment side of the business, we currently have just over $28 billion of assets under administration, as well as $18.5 billion of investment advisory assets under management. We've got about 140 employees that are serving our client base, which numbers over 6,000. And here in Wisconsin, we are the marketer and administrator of the Wisconsin Investment Series Cooperative. When you hear that acronym WISC throughout the conversations today, as well as Amanda's presentation, the Wisconsin Investment Series Cooperative is an intergovernmental agreement that was created in 1988. And we've been serving the fund since 2004, but I think it's important to note that our governing board, the people who hire PMA and all of the other service providers, are participants from the fund. Chad Trowbridge is the board chair from Chippewa Falls Area School District, and then Margie Hamers, who's the finance director in Washington County, also sits on the board alongside Kathy Kaza from the city of Wapaka and a number of school district officials as well. We currently have investment relationships in Wisconsin with over 280 Wisconsin entities in over 50 municipalities, and that includes 28 counties as well. So when we think about the tenets of public fund investing, I think, where our approach to investing public funds is very similar and mirrors the county's approach. Everything that we're doing is based on the county's investment policy. and those tenets of safety, liquidity, and yield. So first and foremost, we want to make sure that those funds are returned to the county anytime an investment is placed, and the appropriate liquidity is available to you, so that you're not overinvested and can fund any of the liabilities that you have or any of those regular expenses that you have. And then the third tenet, yield, very important in terms of your budget and all the budget discussions that you've been having today. But you know that cycles through in different economic cycles, and as we know, 3 years ago we were in a rate environment where we could potentially find yields of 2%. Now we're struggling to find 0.25%, as Amanda will note a little bit later on. In terms of the relationship that PMA and the county have, we were hired via RFP in December of 2017 to provide investment management services, and at that time developed a cash flow analysis for the county, which you can see on the right of this document. And the county's WISC account was open. You joined that intergovernmental agreement in August of 2018. And as you can see, it's a little bit difficult to read those numbers, but really what the cash flow analysis identified was kind of a minimum fund balance amount. Towards the end of the calendar and fiscal year, what is your low point? And so in 2018, that was projected to be right around 14 million. And at that time, the investment committee determined that a $6 million ladder with investments coming due every 6 months was appropriate for the county. So we've included a little performance report here that shows the county's portfolio is primarily certificates of deposit with some DTC certificates of deposit as well. And then you've also got about $6 million of liquid balances here at WISC. WISC is a AAA rated pool, very safe. We strive for $1 per share net asset value, and really, you know, that's a great appropriate liquid option for you if all of the local bank options and any other liquid options are exhausted. I also have some talking points on ARP and the investment options available to the county through PMA on that topic. I know that that's a little bit later on the agenda, so we can talk about that if that's something that you'd like to review a little bit later on. But really thinking about targeting those assets to the liabilities. So what types of projects are you going to be spending the funds on, and when? And then we can potentially look at investment options for you. I sped through that, but any questions that you may have related to the investment portfolio, the investment decision-making process, we're more than happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Anybody got questions? I think we're good. Thanks.
Sure.
Next up, we should have Brian Della talk about just a brief recap of finance.
There we go. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm just like Sarah, it sounds like you have a copy of my presentation. Is that correct?
I'll get it pulled up here right now.
Okay. So while they're pulling that up, I just want to let you know that we gave a presentation very similar to this in July of 2020. And here we are a year later, and we've got you know, a little bit better numbers. We just know a little bit more about the process of the facilities update. So what we're going to do is just give you a real brief presentation on our latest thoughts. Okay, so that's the cover. So if we flip into the next page, we'll look at your existing debt. Now, the county's existing debt is really quite simple. You have one debt issue outstanding that was issued in 2017, and you can prepay this debt issue right now if you have any sort of extra funds or you need to manage your overall debt service levy. But you can't refinance it until at the end of 2024. So that's important. So that's nice that we have some prepayment flexibility here. As you can see, that your existing debt are these green bars presented below, and as you can see in 2021, it's at 2.4 million, and then there's a large drop off. And so obviously that large drop off is where we are projecting to place your payments for the upcoming facilities update. And the red line represents the 2.4 million target that the county board most recently had stated was its goal for its aggregate debt service levy. So we want to keep it below that red line. So the next slide has just a few bullet points on what we know right now, or at least what I know right now about your the Government Center Facilities project. Although there are sort of a different, there are, you know, it's kind of a little bit of an a la carte type of project where, you know, the scope isn't 100% defined right now, but it's sort of my understanding that it's about $7.7 million for the full project. Under schedule, it looks like the design is going to be, the preliminary design will be finished up in August. The documents could be completed and put out for bid in January. And then the contracts could, you know, the bids could come in February and they could be awarded in February. So that's where we are with, you know, the schedule. And, you know, the sources of financing or funding for this, we'll call it $7.7 million right now are borrowing. So, you know, the plan has always included a 10-year general obligation promissory note. There are now some American Rescue Plan Act dollars, you know, for certain permissible projects. And there's also some discussion of using, possibly using some fund balance to the extent that, you know, that the county would prefer to use fund balance on this project instead of a future project. So the next slide highlights a couple options that you have for the timing of your borrowing for the project. So you could do it in the fall of this year. And you would, you know, that would be before you get any bids, before you know the real price of what the project's going to cost. Or you could wait to borrow in the spring of 2022. That's after you get the bids and you'll know what precisely, you know, presumably, except for there's some potential change orders, precisely what things should cost. And typically, we would recommend that you wait to get the actual bids before you borrow the money. But if there was a strong reason to consider doing it this fall, of course, you know, we could accommodate. Well, however, you know, either way that you borrow, whether it's in the fall or the spring, you know, we're going to be able to manage your aggregate debt service levy to the 2.4 million, assuming that that's still the bogey that the county board wants to keep, or the target. So if we were to borrow in the fall, you know, the county would just, we would structure the new debt so your payment in 2022 got you to the 2.4 million. If we borrowed in the spring of 22, then the way we manage your debt service levy is we would prepay, or we would have the county prepay a portion of that 2017 debt issue, so you get your debt service right at 2.4 million. Okay. So the next slide I wanted to, we've had some borrowing examples before. We've shown you some projections. So what I did is I sort of made a few projections and came up with one that I thought was kind of real simple to understand and kind of I would say a reasonable scenario. You can do anything you like, right? I mean, within reason, but this one met your objectives as I am aware of them. And so as you can see by the below graph, you've got your existing debt plus your new debt exactly is on the $2.4 million projection. And what would compose the borrowing? So we have talked about before a $2 million annual borrowing for an average annual borrowing. Okay. So I wanted to keep that $2 million annual borrowing going forward. And I assumed that the county would issue the debt in the spring of 2022 when the actual amount was known. And then I just backed in how much money could the county borrow in the spring of 2022, continue to borrow $2 million a year on average, and still keep it precisely within this $2.4 million target average annual or aggregate annual debt service levy. And that amount turned out to be $6.37 million. Now, it's just a scenario. This number, it also, in my mind, the difference between 6.4 and 7.7, that could very well be made up potentially with some ARPA funds or fund balance. Now, of course, if you wanted to borrow the whole 7.7, that we could do that too, and we could easily fit that in there. But then maybe you're only borrowing 1.8 million or 1.9 million on average going forward. So it's kind of an arbitrary number here. You can borrow 6.4 today and then borrow 2 in perpetuity, or you could borrow 7.7 in the spring of 2022, and then maybe you're just borrowing like 1.8 million for the next 5 years, and then after that, then you could start borrowing your full 2 million on average. These are just averages, but I want to give you something that sort of a way to think about things and a place to start. And from this point, we can adjust per your wishes. And that's pretty much the end of the debt presentation, unless, of course, we're open for questions.
Questions? Sat through all this here. What did we, a couple weeks ago, finance?
So you're good?
Good. And they kind of reflected what we talked about. Right. And they put in those ideas about the financing that, I've heard from board members that, just because we can borrow it doesn't mean we should. Right. And that we should look at some general fund money and some part money. And so I think they're going to make sure that's part of the plan. So that's kind of,
Nice thing is, with that example or any example we choose, when Brian said, hey, and you can continue to borrow $2 million a year, you don't have to, or may postpone it or delay it to a later point when you have a project or an event. I mean, we've talked about things that need to get done or things we may want to do in the future for different things. And so that money is there, but we can take care of this now.
And one of the things I learned from that meeting too, because there was a couple bankers on the meeting too, and it was interesting to hear them say, county shouldn't just spend all their cash, and we don't want your cash. What I heard, banks have plenty of cash. So right now, no one's chasing down your cash. So, but yet it's good to have that balance there and
balanced portfolio, like you do anything else.
Like anything else. And so, I have after learning about all that, listening through it, I feel very comfortable with what they're saying and what the administration and Chad and everyone's doing.
All right, thanks, Brian.
All right,
Yep.
take care.
All right, Amanda, you're gonna give us
And Amanda, I should include in that too, because she really had all the facts, because Chad was driving around with another road one day.
So this time I did more of a layout so that everybody could see everything exactly what we have in our accounts. So the first one in our main operating fund, the bank bid, is with Midwest One. We basically have in a money market account there currently 20 million. Now that seems like a lot, but we are getting tax money in earlier this year, and it will be continuing to go up until mid-August. And August 20th, we pay out on average about 28 million in tax districts. So that's why we kind of keep a larger fund. And if you remember the cash flow analysis, there's that big bump every year, and that was the tax dollars coming in and going back out. So we are getting 0.30%. All these numbers are as of June 30th, are noted here. To give you an example of the rates, because this has come up, as of January 2020, we were getting 1.76% in our in the money market. And then by December 2020, it was 0.3. So that can just show you what happens when a pandemic hits and everything shuts down. We do have our operating cash in there, and this is basic operating cash. There's a couple grand more between a couple of the odds and ends accounts. With the DA has a few account, and then they transfer at the end of the month. Clerk of courts, sheriff's department, etc. By statutory requirements, a lot of them have their own accounts for different reasons. Some of those are non-interest bearing, some are, depends on state statutes and regulations. Currently, we're getting 0.25%, 0.5% in January 2020, and it went down to 0.25 by December, January of 2020. The next one going over is the state investment fund. Currently, we keep a balance of about 2.3 million in there. It's very low. It used to be very competitive. As you can see, it was 1.61 as January 2020. It was 0.1 December. It was 0.505 in May, and we just got the updated numbers yesterday, so I was able to update this to 0.04 for June. Kind of just a fund we keep money in. It's very liquid. We can get it out the same day as long as I notify them by 11 a.m. We used to, before we had PMA, and before we had the money market at Midwest One, because they collateralize all the money over 400,000, they only wanted at one point, I think it was maybe prior to them being Midwest One, they only wanted a certain dollar amount. So once we hit that dollar amount, it was like 11 or 12 million. We had to put everything somewhere else. We always put it in the state investment fund, and then we would get it back like 3 days before we sent out all the wires and the checks and stuff. So that's, and years ago, I think right around the time I started, which was 2003 as treasurer, we used to keep some of the health insurance funds in the state investment pool also. But now we also keep them in our, between the money market and the operating cash account. So Bremer Bank, we have two main accounts there. We have the money market. We had that when we got the loans from them for the highway building. And then as we paid it off, when we got the money for the highway building, we put it all in the money market at Bremer. And then when we paid all the bills out, then they transferred it back to Polk County Operating Fund to cover those expenses. We did leave $5 million in there. Their rate is pretty much consistent with everything. 0.03% as of the end of last month. Again, they were also 1.7 as of January, and then they went down to 0.05. Golden Age Manor has their operating cash in Bremer Bank because it's a local bank and they take it over. So currently they have about 60,000 in there. They send us, we transfer money out weekly. They send us an amount, say, please transfer this money. So every week we transfer money from the Golden Age Manor account to the Midwest One operating cash account. And so that way their books are very up to date, and we, the finance department knows within a week how much cash they're actually dealing with, etc. So that we started about 2 years ago, I think, and that's worked very well for everybody. We have 2 certificates of deposit, as Chris was saying. Folks don't really want our money right now. They are money flush. So we have Sterling Bank, Citizen State Bank. We have talked, and I think after tax collection, because it's our busy time, in August, I think we're going to talk, Vince, Chad and I, and talk about going out to other banks in the local area about more CDs. We used to have one in the Clear Lake Bank, which I can't remember what the name of that is now. It's had like and for a while we had the bank that's in Dresser had one, and then when we had Associates State Bank down in downtown St. Croix Falls, they had one. U.S. Bank's never been interested in having any childless CDs. We do the amount of $250,000. That is the amount that's covered by the federal deposit, FDIC. As you can see, they're slightly over that because it had some interest accrual. We got real lucky both in 2020 and 2021. The Sterling Bank one stayed the same. So they didn't go down for their 2 one-year CDs. So they didn't go down. We renewed it before the pandemic really took a hold in 2020. And then by 2021, we're looking at some positive things, so they kept the rate the same. Citizen State Bank, they were 0.84. I think we renewed theirs slightly earlier in March, so it was a little higher. And then they did go down this March because there's still a little concern, 0.3, but it's still a really good rate. And we look at the PMA investments, you can just, it'll kind of explain itself. So we have 12 million total with PMA. Now, we had 6 and 6, and that was our plan, and we have some really good rates. We have 1.7, 1.6, 1.02. We currently have 12 CDs with them. And so what they do is they do a program similar to or called CDARS, where they go out to all these different banks all over the United States and they bid them out. So they bid out $250,000 amounts. So they're automatically covered by FDIC. So we have to let them know anytime we have money in a different bank, so they will know if their CD is going to be over the $250,000 limit that the FDIC covers, because it's per entity, not per account. So if we open a CD for $100,000 at a bank and then they put one for $250,000, we're now at $350,000. We're only covered through $150,000 or $250,000. So we are very careful to make sure that they know if we do anything different in our accounts. So they have CDs all over the United States. They're all very safe banks. They're all covered by the FDIC, so we don't have any worries about them. All of this also is auditor approved, so we don't have any worries on that end. I get monthly, sometimes more collateralization statements from the different banks. As the CDs came up in the last year, we haven't renewed them because the rates have been freakishly low. 0.08. We are starting to see 0.1516, so we're kind of watching it and waiting. We want to get in. Very jittery right now, but we want to get in with something that'll make it worth our time to lock it in for 6 months or 12 months. Do currently have 2 coming due in August, 4 in September, and then 2 more August 22, September 22. Their WISC funds is doing about the same as money market at Bremer and the state investment pool at 0.03%. The reason we have better rates at Midwest One is because they are our bank bid, and part of it was the bank bid agreement that we did for the operating funds. Part of it was an agreement they wanted us to keep some of the funds in their bank in the money market, so they're giving us a better rate than we would get if we were just off the streets. So that's, yes.
I have some questions. I understand that credit unions can't do everything a bank can do.
They have a different FDIC type of thing. I don't know the name of it per se, but it's another federal insurance program, and it is $250,000 also. We have reached out to them, and they have not been interested in the past in investing any of our CDs. And when we do bank bids, we always go notify each bank that has a branch in Polk County, credit union, otherwise, and they're all offered the same opportunity. Yep.
And one thing to keep in mind, committee, is right now a lot of banks, they don't really want additional deposits. They are so flush with deposits that there's honestly banks out there that won't, they really have no interest in taking your deposit right now because they've got so many.
Yes.
Clear on the PMA Investments $9 million WISC funds. Those are money market accounts or what?
It's the WISC fund. It's more similar to the state investment pool. When Sarah was talking in the beginning of her presentation, that's what she was talking about, that had the school board president and the other two people who were on the board for that. So.
But where is the money physically, or so to speak?
Well, the WISC funds, I think, are invested more. Is Sarah or either of them still here?
Yep, I am still here. Amanda, so WISC is a local government investment pool. So those funds are directly invested in state statute allowable types of very short-term investments. So similar to a bank money market, except the funds are held at the bank. This is done fully liquid, available on a daily basis. But there's repurchase, high quality repurchase agreements, short-term government agencies, and all kinds of other short-term investment options that are allowable under statute. And it's invested in a pooled manner with just under $2 billion invested currently.
Follow, where would that money, 9 million, how would we use that? Is that in the August payouts of?
No, that is what we've set aside as investment funds. Now, it might be held as a different reason in the budget, but as we don't need it physically right now, we feel that we safely put it in another investment vehicle until we need it. So it might be part of our undesignated, it might be part of the human service budget, that haven't used the cash at this point. It's those funds.
Yeah.
So
most of that 9 million is our health fund. That's where the bulk of it is.
I'm sorry.
he said most of the 9 million is our health insurance fund because we're self-pay.
Then is there a page that spells out our current policies as to?
I have that. And I know Chris had asked for investment policy, and I was going to find out if you wanted me just to email it to you or print out. It's part of the whole finance policy. It's I think section 25, but I can't remember, or 2.5. So I didn't know if Chad, if we should do the whole investment policy, because I know you had talked, or the whole finance policy.
So on the committee's work plan that we added last year, we began every December reevaluating the total finance policy and the personnel policy. That is on the work plan for December. So what we will do is present the draft. We'll look through it and present the draft in November for then you all to review, and then December to finalize to send to the county board, just as we did last year.
I think it'd be useful if you could send out or just say it now, what the reference, it's on the county website or not, or?
Is the finance policy on the county website, or is it behind the wall?
It's behind the wall on the employee website. We'll get the clerk to send it out to you again, though.
We can have her send it
I'll get it.
out, and then we can note which one is the investment policy.
Do it by email or
Yep.
whatever.
Or you can print it out, put it in your box.
I think it'd be helpful preparation for discussing it further in November.
Yeah, one of the things, Mike, that we brought up at our finances too is like Supervisor O'Connell brought up at the last county board meeting, that he thinks it's time for us to review, like we have 20% fund balance, or is that what it is, that we can't go below it, and there's been discussion that even from the auditors that we should raise that. So I know we're going to be working on that. This is gonna be an ongoing thing, and you're gonna see all that next month and the next month and the next month.
And the investment policy is based very strongly on the state investment policy, what's allowed by the state statutes. The state has certain regulations. We did rewrite it a few years ago, which may have been as much as 8. I'm not sure exactly. The state did modify. We're only allowed to do CDs up to 3 years in length. They changed that, I think, to 5. So we did go through at that point and update our finance policy then. Wisconsin has a very strong regulations on what you can and cannot invest in. And so we, like I said, we pretty much use that as our basis, and then we added in the titles and the groups and stuff like that. But we can definitely get it out to you guys. I happen to have it in my files at my computer. So.
I gotta say again, these guys are doing a great job, so.
Now that I know what you're looking for, it was
Yeah.
easier for me to have it ready for
Yes,
this
it
meeting.
was
So
good, and I think you answered a lot of, we haven't had this level of information since I've been on the board, even what we did today. So I appreciate it.
sometimes, like I said, I've been here since 2003, so some of this I know, so it's
Right.
get that some of you change and things like that. So if you need any other information, I'm always cross call or by email.
Thank you very much.
All right. Just giving us an update. Recipe plan.
All right, so, yeah, just to cap off what Brian and Sarah and Amanda talked about. We have the ARPA funds. As you all know, we got the first tranche in May. It's about 4.3 million. We'll get another tranche next May or June, equal amount. We're looking at investment options for that money right now, instead of it just sitting in a checking account at a 25 basis point rate, 0.25% interest. We're looking at other options, or I think a 30 basis point, looking to invest it. We are able to recover some of that if the board so chooses as lost revenue. And it's this strange formula that the feds put in there. And right now it looks like we could recover $1 million of it based off lost revenue. What that does is that transfers it to the fund balance, and it takes the federal encumbrances off of it. It may be a little more than that. There's a new calculator out, but I think it's around $1 million. If you transfer it there, then it's just like all your other unassigned balance. You can use it as you see fit. As far as Mr. Ruck had a question at the last meeting on how much of the ARPA funds we could use towards the LHB project, my estimate is $300,000 to $500,000. I know that seems like kind of a wide range, but the ARPA says you can use it for infrastructure related to sewer and water. So if you look at LHB, you've got everything from the water softener to water, plumbing and all that kind of stuff. I think that's really going to be the range once we broke out, piping that delivered water, piping that took away sewage, any of that kind of stuff. I think you could safely say we could use $300,000 to $500,000 of the ARPA money towards the LHB project. The one thing I would ask the committee to keep in mind as you're deciding how you want to break out this building cost and bonding is that there is the time value of money. And while investment return rates are really low right now, borrowing rates are at record low. Investment rates will go up when interest rates for borrowing go up. So if we borrow low and get that locked in for 10 years, and then we leave cash in investments and those investment rates go up, our money's more valuable that we have now. Our cash becomes much more valuable over the course of 10 years as opposed to spending it out of our pocket. So, just as you debate bonding versus paying cash or what amount of cash to use, right now, everything I've seen from PMA, from Kiplinger's, from those things, say rates are going to stay low through the end of the year, but they do expect rates to start climbing after that. That means our investments will get better returns as well. So the more cash we have to invest, the more money we can make.
Chad,
Yes, sir.
how, there's a limit on how long you can hold the borrowed funds, without using them for their purpose or whatever, or what you can do with them while you're holding them?
So anything that we cannot convert to general fund, anything that we can't claim as lost revenue has to be spent by 2024.
No, I was going back just to the fact, let's say we borrowed $7 million in December, but we didn't start the project until, didn't have any payout on the project until April or whatever. Is there some time limit as to how long in advance of your project you can borrow the funds?
No, I mean, we're just taking a note out. So the note's 10 years from the day you take it. If we do a 10-year GO.
I know it goes the other way, that if you're borrowing money and you invest it and you don't spend it on your project, that violates some regulation.
So yeah, you can't borrow it to invest it. You have to borrow it and spend it on your project. You know, I think if you went a year or two, Mr. Pritchard, there'd be problems. But if you're talking a few months to get it shovel ready, you're not going to really run into anything.
All right, any more questions on the funds?
Is this on fund or are we talking about ARP?
Yeah, we're actually now talking about ARP, and
I got something I want to
yeah, and
really cover.
I would just say too, I'll fill this out front, because I thought the purpose too was to talk about the process of how we decide to use the money, and I'll just kind of give what staff and us have been discussing. First thing we're trying to do is understand the restrictions and the intent of ARPA. You know, in general, when it came out, it was to turn the tide on the pandemic and its economic fallout. So that's pretty broad. But they also then laid out more specific. Nobody's gotten a clear picture, but we have some general directions that we can go. To answer Mr. Pritchard's question on ARPA, yes, we need to have the funds obligated, at least obligated by December 31st of 2024, and then expended by December of 26. So we've got some time there. And I guess my point is we don't need to rush into anything unless we've got something shovel ready and we want to do it.
Does government ever rush into anything? I'm just surprised you said that, Vince.
Well, no, I'm reassuring you that
Okay.
your approach is outstanding here.
Okay.
Clearly, the thing I want to make sure that we're all in agreement with is that the Board of Supervisors will decide how this is spent. It's not a staff project. It's not, somebody else, but it will be the Board of Supervisors. And finally, our thought is, as staff, what we can do is help develop the criteria on how we will select what is done. In other words, we want to make sure, is it qualified? If somebody says, I got a great idea, but if it doesn't qualify, we're going to stop it. Second, does it promote what this Board of Supervisors has said is important? Think about the priorities that you set. Meth, safety, parks and trails, and broadband. Those types of things. It should be related to that. Now, that can be broad. Is it long lasting? Can we get it done in a timely fashion? Is it reasonable? If it's a $90 million project, it's like, really? You're going to commit to this? Obviously not. We don't have the money. So my thought is, just to get feedback from you, is that an approach that makes sense to you, is to develop what are the important factors? If we can come up with those and get your feedback, that will help you then say what qualifies, what doesn't, and what's most important.
I think the key to it is you got to set up a game plan like you're doing, understand what those key factors are, draw priorities to it, and then understand what funds will be appropriate to achieve those priorities. No different than setting a business plan. Because the last thing I think we want to do is have people come in and throwing out their own personal agenda as to what they want to see and get something going down a path that isn't in the best interest of the county. I mean, some of this is a little bit unprecedented to have this kind of a fund balance that we don't really know what to do with, or nothing's particularly earmarked. So I think to go at this process slow and have everybody's involvement is gonna be key to being successful with it.
My standpoint, for the deciders, that we got a one-time opportunity.
Right.
How many times are we gonna get 8.6 million handed to us? And I'm convinced that 10 years from now, some people will look back and go, whoever decided to do that, smart, they had foresight, it made sense. We probably wouldn't have the courage to do it today. Well, they don't have the 8.6 million like we do. So I encourage you all to think big.
But go ahead.
Just have a comment, you know, with the county's housing study. And
Any what study?
housing.
Housing.
And Polk County EDC's, you know, one of their priorities, you know, being housing. You know, are there any ways to work a housing element into this for infrastructure, utilities, or things to help with that housing portion of, you know, clearly what is something that is important to county as well? I guess I'm just throwing out, if there's a way to work that in, I would like to see a housing benefit.
One of the things I've talked to the administrator about, I've heard from a few supervisors about, I've had my own constituents start throwing me things. One of the things that I would like to see, if this committee would be okay with that, I'd actually maybe amend the county board agenda, is before we start talking about projects, right? I like housing. I like weed collector on the lake because that's going to support, you know, tourism. You wouldn't believe the ideas we're already getting. I'd like to go to committee of the whole personally and put on the agenda and talk about the process. Before we start talking about the projects specific, and that we could, I don't feel like our general government committee personally should be deciding how we spend the money. If we make it a committee of the whole item, and that the committee of the whole, the county board, would have it on our monthly agenda, every committee of the whole. And then that way we could develop through committee of the whole process on how are we going to evaluate projects. Staff could help us with identifying what we can do and what we can't do.
Tracking the balance.
And do it all in committee of the whole, then spring out in committees and everyone working on this project, this idea, because when it says we're not rushing into it, I would almost say we should rush into it, because how long it takes us to get a project done. And if we wait another year to key up this idea, and then to get, you know, I just saw a project we just finished in Balsam Lake, that the museum, thanks to the administrator's supervision and management of this wall. He built a wall. Trump couldn't build a wall, but Mr. Netherland built a wall.
No, I did.
And he got it completed the day before the event. Oh, so I just want to give you credit for that, Administrator Netherland.
No, don't give me credit. Mo and his.
I saw you out there directing. But I think we should actually have a pace to this personally. Because if this money's going to dribble in, and I know how long it takes us to agree on stuff, and then to run it through committees and then get that filtered up to the board. So just, that's what I'm hearing from a few, and just my sense, you know, it's just, I want to throw that out there, is that should we do that in a committee of the whole, or do we want to do it in a committee, or let everyone feed to this committee? I'm not comfortable to decide what are high priority projects in the county when, you know, because what's going to happen is it's going to become a personal thing. Oh, I know what is important in my community. Mike knows what's important in his community. And like I agree with Vince, we don't want to start shelling out $100,000 all over, and then we don't even know what happened to the money. So I'd like to do a committee of the whole. And if you guys feel like that's a good way to start the process and keep it there, I would put that on our agenda every month and work through that, so all the supervisors are involved.
Yeah, I think it's a big enough animal that everybody is going to want to have some involvement in it.
Right.
And then maybe as certain things are decided, they can go back to the appropriate committee
Exactly.
structure to.
So let's say you take, you know, that was one of the comments I was fed with is, math is one of our big issues, right? Well, you can certainly say math and, you know, what happens across the street might have a complete impact on public transportation, getting someone from jail to work every day. You know, so, you know, once the board would decide on the big idea, and hey, let's fund this or fund a study, then it could go back to actually work through the details through, let's say, public transportation. It would go to that committee because we've approved X amount of dollars to work on that. Then those would go to committees.
Yeah, I mean, I can't see the committee, the whole micromanaging
No.
each individual thing, because that's going to take forever and it's going to be hard to get things done. But if the committee of the whole can form the structure and the framework of how it's going to go out, by.
The process.
You guys are good with that?
Yeah, I'm good with that. Sure.
Yep, absolutely.
Good with that, Chair?
Yep.
So how do we do that? Do we have to make that as a recommendation or do I just do that? Do we just amend the agenda and have it on there every month? And staff would we have the planner involved and Mo and you and Chad and everybody involved in like a discussion and presentation on, and that's where we'll get our updates and that's where we'll be making recommendations.
Okay. Yeah, I think we can have that as committee of the whole and open it up and kick it off like this.
So then we just need to make I'd like a recommendation from general government that that's what we want to do, maybe.
Can you just put it on the agenda, Chris?
I can. There's consensus to do that.
Process wise.
It wouldn't require, I mean, but I think it sounds like the committee has a consensus that that's a good route to go, and so that can just be shared.
In the minutes?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so then I would amend the county agenda to have this as a standing committee of the whole item until it's over.
Till they're gone.
Yeah.
Right. Move on to, update.
Mr. Chair.
What?
Mr. Chair, I have a request. Number 18, could we move that up just because my battery is about to die on my laptop? Just so I can walk you guys through that resolution quickly.
All right, let's talk about resolution 3221.
This is the standard part of the budget process where we carry forward statutorily required funds, projects that haven't been completed in the previous budget year, and any leftover. So the key takeaways from this are that part of the jail controller project was carried forward into this year. That's because we started it last year, but it was a year-long project. So it'll be finished out this year. That was budgeted money in 2021 that's going into, or in 2020 that's going into 2021. The other thing you'll notice, a substantial return to the fund balance from Community Service Division. A lot of that is because of the grants we received from COVID that offset those levy dollars. So you won't see a substantial reduction in the proposed budget for community service. There's about $1.6 million from community service going back to the fund balance, and a good portion of that is because it was offset by COVID funds. Other than that, unless there's questions, that's the summation of it.
All right, we should get a motion, either send this to county board with or without a recommendation. Make a motion.
Make a motion to send it to the board with a recommendation.
Mr. Chair,
Yep.
he indicated 1.6.
That was from community services going back in.
And I show 1.24
on the resolution.
on the resolution.
I might have the wrong number in my head, Malia. I apologize.
Well, and it was really Mo that noticed it. I was.
Just want to make sure you don't have to amend it.
Yeah, no, it's whatever's on there is correct. We've been through the auditors, through it with the auditors. I apologize.
Whatever amount is on the resolution is correct.
Yes, sir.
Any more discussion on that motion? Not all's in favor?
Right.
Right. Carried. All right, thanks, Chad. If your battery goes dead.
Yeah, if it goes dead, sorry guys.
All right, let's get back then to the update discussion and possible action regarding LHP plans for the government center.
Just an update on the LHB project. Right now, we're going in a deep dive with the mechanicals, so we've had the engineers from LHB on site today, last week and next week, and just setting up design meetings and moving forward with the process. That's where we stand right now. And then item 15 is the top. And then the next page. Item 15. This is a request from Charlie, did I pronounce this right? Haney, that resides at 105 Pinecrest Road here, the north of the government center. And his request was to clean up his property lines and purchase a piece of property from the county. It's 0.03 acres. It's about 1,191 square feet. It's this little triangle right there is the parcel that he would like to purchase from the county to square up his property lines. I spoke with a realtor on the process on doing this and what that would be worth. They've done similar ones a little larger than this. I thought this would land about $500 if you wanted to sell it to the gentleman. The process that we'd have to go to if authorized, he'd have to have this own land surveyed, pay for a survey. So we get the property description of the land and then work through the surveyor on transferring the property to him. There's a $400 review fee that the surveyor has, the county, to review these things, but that fee would be waived if he got his own surveyor to survey the land. The request was from the gentleman to purchase that from.
Looks like there's a little deviation in the corners there. Would that be squared off right?
Be squared off with that corner there.
Okay. Just so we didn't end up with another sliver.
Correct.
Sounds reasonable. I mean, and he's paying for the survey and he's gonna give us something for it, it sounds reasonable. Is that little sliver of land good for anything to the county? Is it worth?
I personally, I mean, I just want to raise my hand on this. I personally know Charlie well. It's in my my jurisdiction, so I don't want to comment on it. He's never asked me about it. He's never talked to me about it, but I just want to, I'm not going to vote on it or say about it.
I guess given the information that we have, it seems like a reasonable request.
Has anybody looked at it? All of you men don't looked at it?
I did not physically walk back there and look at it.
Find them, wouldn't it just be another piece of?
There's gotta be markers there on the survey marks.
Yeah, I'm not sure why it ended up. It's just a survey.
So is this gonna come, you just need something from this committee to take the county board?
It'd stay with this committee, I believe, as if you authorize me to move forward and sell the gentleman the property. I'd move forward with it from a census or recommendation. Right.
With the country dam getting in a lot of trouble. one committee has that authority just to sell property.
And it has,
Let me speak up real quick. Country Dam was taken by tax deed, and so there's specific rules and state regulations on how you have to sell it, whereas this was not a tax deed property, so it's not.
But it just would have been a lot cleaner if it would have come from the whole board. I'm just saying, we don't need something going that general government is selling property.
well,
And we could, I could with an agreement to move it to the county board in August, just move it to the county board in August, so I can talk to Charlie if he agrees with that cost. And then have an answer with that.
I think that makes sense, and I think, Mo, I think if someone would go look at it, just so we understand if there's anything there that would make it any impact. I'm not generally in favor of selling county land, but at the same token, if we got something that's unusable and it makes sense, then we should do it. But I think somebody should look at it so we understand what we've got going and then bring it to the August meeting and make a decision as a whole,
Just keep
the whole board. Exactly.
I'll put it on.
That just, sure. So we know if there's anything particular on that piece.
Nothing's built on affairs. All right. Yeah. Then item 16, this I'm bringing in front of the committee, for the previous. This is a joint project this would be a joint project with the city of Amory at the Cathead Trail, to expand the parking lot here for more parking for trailers and UTVs.
and horse trailers.
What's that?
And horse trailers.
And horse trailers.
I don't think so, Brad. Good try.
This is the,
Horse trailers go there?
Well, yeah, horses could go on the Cattail Trail.
They're not gonna walk across that bridge.
I didn't know why horses can't run.
this parcel here is owned by the city. The green is owned by the county. There'd be access off this end of the parking lot, so more trailer units can come in here and park, exit. The city of Amory would do all the preliminary work, the grubbing, the clearing, installing the road base, compacting it, get it ready for asphalt. Just pay for the pavement. This would come out of the $200,000 that was set aside for trail development off the sale of the lime quarry. So just looking for just to move ahead with this project, of the joint project with the city of Amory.
I got a question. What does the county currently own there?
This green.
The whole green? Whole green. So what you're doing is just saying, you're gonna create in the red a parking
lot. And it's, wanted from general government concurrence with that, because it's a joint project with utilizing part of the city of Amory's property.
So it's a
The county will still own it.
What's that?
The county will still own it.
County will still own this, and the city will still own that.
It's in the green is the cattail corridor, or
Cattail Trail is right here.
why does the county own the green?
We had for a long time. I don't know why they
It's a
purchased the
parking lot. It's the trailhead.
Right here's the bathrooms for the trailhead. That would tie the bathrooms in. Yes, well, also.
One of the things that I remember meeting Paul out there, I mean, if we're gonna create a new agreement, one of the questions was the trail that goes around there through that property? And, for some reason, I remember Paul saying, I don't know that there's an agreement for this. And if we're gonna be rewriting an agreement on the property, maybe we should address that easement across the property for that trail they have there too at the same time. Are you gonna have to create a new agreement on the property or any new easements or?
Currently, it was just a joint project to build that. There's no agreement with the city for this little strip of land or.
I was just talking about where the 100 is. There's a trail through there. There's a walking trail and they use it, and I don't know if we have an agreement to allow that, or you're writing a new agreement up, but if there's no agreement and you're just talking a parking lot, I'm totally in favor of it. Are you getting rid of the recycling containers on the site?
The city of Amory is working on a new site and graveling that. they want them out of there too. Now, on weekends, Center Street and Riverside Boulevard is full of trailer units. Trying to get UTVs.
Sure.
I make a motion to whatever you need to do to continue.
Second.
Did I hear the cost of paving to the county would be $200,000?
No, the cost of paving this is slightly, is 21,000. It comes out of the $200,000 that was set aside for trail development.
So we're gonna use some of that money from the lime quarry money that is this like our first project to do with some of those funds?
Yes.
And I think that's important that we tell the public. I think that's an important message that the public knows, here's where we're starting to use the money.
Right, and as staff, we're also looking at, as we move into the budget cycle, our CUP or CIPs for parks and trails.
Yeah.
Is how some of those funds can be utilized.
Sure.
Whether it's parking lot development, trail development, or whatever, so that we're installing a line item for that one.
Just one other, on the resolution on the lime quarry funds, did that spell out both the Stour Seven Lakes Trail and the Cattails Trail or not? I don't recall.
It's spelled out trail development.
And then we had a resolution where we took 200 of it, put it into our budget.
Right.
For this year, and that you're gonna use that 200, some of that 200 for this.
Yes.
All right, we got a motion. Second. One more discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? I think that brings us down, review and update of our work plan. We need to update on our work plan.
So it looks correct. I went through it this month. Next month, we have the fee schedule and the annual reports. I did call the director of West Central Regional Planning and got her voicemail. I just sent her an email to see if she could present next month the general government as you guys requested. I haven't heard back. But other than that, I don't think anything needs adjusted.
Subject matters for the next meeting. Got a few of them already.
Recycling preliminary.
Yeah, I think we already said that this is our homework and then that'll stay on. Hey, we could sit here longer if we choose, or we could adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Favor?
Aye.
Carried.